I see chiefs coming in the room, so the room is filling up slowly. We'll be waiting maybe 1 or 2 minutes more before we start talking about the resolutions. Just a reminder, there is a resolution kiosk outside the room. If ever you have questions about the resolutions, you can go see the resolution committee at the resolution kiosk outside the assembly room. There's also the resolution table right over at your right. If ever you have proposed amendments for resolutions or other things to discuss with the resolution committee, you can go and see them either outside or next to me. Donc, si jamais vous avez des questions par rapport aux résolutions qui sont discutées, il y a un kiosque de résolution juste à l'extérieur de l'Assemblée, de la salle de l'Assemblée. Donc, vous pouvez aller voir l'équipe qui s'occupe des résolutions à l'APN pour leur poser vos questions. Il y a aussi la table de résolution qui est à votre droite dans l'Assemblée. Si jamais vous avez des amendements proposés ou autre chose à discuter sur des résolutions, vous pouvez aller les voir donc soit dans la salle ou à l'extérieur de visit them either inside or outside the room. Voting, I also want to remind you that we're voting on resolutions, and if there are, we firstly ask if there's any opposition when we're at the question, the vote, and if there is no opposition, we don't need to go to a formal complete vote on the electronic platform, but if there are oppositions, then we will go on the electronic platform. So have your phones ready to be able to, or computer, tablet, to be able to vote at that moment. And if you need the QR code, you can also, and the website, you don't remember it, you can go see the team as well. They will remind you, but you should receive an email or a text message to tell you that we're voting on that resolution at that time. Also, if we don't need to go to an electronic vote, on the platform we added all the resolutions that were voted by consensus. So you can see the resolutions that were carried by consensus, even though we didn't need to go through the platform. So know that you can go and see all the resolutions that were passed during this assembly on that platform. Donc, je veux juste vous rappeler que quand on vote par rapport aux résolutions, on demande premièrement s'il y a des oppositions dans la salle, puis s'il n'y en a aucune, on va, la résolution est adoptée par consensus. Si c'est ce qui se passe, vous pouvez quand même aller sur votre plateforme de vote électronique pour voir toutes les résolutions qui sont passées durant cette assemblée. Ça va être écrit résolution adoptée par consensus, même si on n'a pas eu besoin d'utiliser la plateforme électronique. Donc, vous pouvez tous y avoir accès sur vos téléphones. Puis, justement, vu qu'on va voter sur des résolutions cet après-midi jusqu'à 3 heures, on vous invite à avoir votre téléphone, votre tablette, votre ordinateur prêt pour être en mesure de consulter, reconsulter les résolutions, mais aussi être en mesure de voter lorsque ça sera le moment. Donc, voilà. Je vais passer le micro à mon collègue dans quelques instants pour qu'on commence. Ce ne sera pas bien long. Won't be long. One, two. I will now turn over to my colleague Adam for the resolutions.
Miigwech, thank you, Veronique, for that, giving us an update and also some housekeeping announcements for the Assembly. We were just waiting for confirmation that we do have enough delegates returned from lunch back into the room to be able to make decisions. I know that there are caucus sessions from each of the regions. Each of the provinces are having their own sessions during the lunch break, and I know that they are watching. I know they are participating online through that forum, but we don't have an official count. So we're just going to get some confirmation that we can proceed and we are good to go. Yeah, you got you. So chiefs and proxies, we are going to continue on with resolutions. Again, I know that not everyone is back, so I'll have to confirm that the movers and seconders are here. We are going to start with draft resolution number 10. So if I can have encore, please, if you can go to draft resolution number 10, have that brought up on the screen, and we'll get right into that resolution. So this resolution is moved by Chief Sheldon Kent. I'm looking around to see if Chief Sheldon Kent is back. I don't see. If you are here, just give me a wave. I don't see Chief Kent. If anybody has his contact information, give him a quick text that his resolution is on the floor. Seconded by Chief Roger Redman. Chief Roger Redman, are you here? I don't see him either. So what I'm going to do is I'll get into the resolution. I will read the resolution, and if they are not back or if they're not here, I will ask for another mover and seconder, and we'll go from there. So again, I am looking for the mover, Chief Sheldon Kent, seconder, Chief Roger Redman, Standing Buffalo Dakota Nation in Saskatchewan. So if I can have encore scroll down, please. This is the resolution. It reads, therefore be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly 1 call on Indigenous Services Canada, ISC, to use the pause in funding to the Indigenous Peoples Survey, IPS, to remove First Nations data collection from the IPS. 2, call on ISC to direct adequate resources to the First Nations Information Governance Centre, FNIGC, to work with its regional partners to expand its current data collection initiatives to include First Nations persons living off reserve to address an impending critical gap in the First Nations data landscape. 3, direct the FNIGC to act as stewards of the regional data from all past iterations of the IPS, as well as the new First Nations-led data collection efforts that will replace the First Nations component of the IPS, and where appropriate, to repatriate all community-specific IPS data to each respective First Nation in Canada through FNIGC's partners. 4, direct Statistics Canada and ISC to work with the FNIGC to support the new approach to data collection that would replace the First Nations component of the post-census IPS until the First Nations-led approach to enumeration has been realized. 5, call on the Government of Canada to provide sufficient sustainable funding for the full implementation of the First Nations data governance strategy, prioritizing the establishment of a national network of fully functional regional information governance centres, along with a fully functional national centre to coordinate the network at the national level, enabling all First Nations to govern and use their own data and information locally, regionally, and nationally with the necessary capacities to facilitate First Nation-led enumeration and other long-term First Nations data priorities. So that is the resolution before you. Again, I'm just going to check that we have the mover, Chief Sheldon Kent, in the room. It does not look like Chief Kent is back. He is the seconder, Chief Roger Redman. Are you in the room? It does not look like it. So we got 2 options. One is if we can have another mover and seconder, otherwise we will pause on this one and we'll come back to it. Do we have a mover or seconder? If so, if you can approach the microphone or raise your hand. Or raise your hand online. Microphone 2, please.
Chief Calvin Bruno, Papachaise First Nation, Edmonton, Alberta. I'd like to make the move.
Chief, looking for a seconder. Do we have a seconder? Oh, I see 2 approaching. Looks like a race. Let's see who gets there first. Microphone 2.
Bonjour. Councillor Marcel Donio, Bingwe I'd like to second the motion.
Miigwech, thank you, proxy for that. So we have a mover and seconder. The resolution is before you. Mover and seconder, it's not necessary, but if you wish to speak to the resolution, there is that opportunity now. Mover and seconder. Otherwise, the floor is open. Any discussion on the resolution before you? Any discussion? Either approach the microphone in the room, or if you're joining virtually on Zoom, just hit the raise hand function and we'll have you recognized. So I see no hands raised online, no one approaching the microphones. I'll give it another few seconds. And the resolution is before you, fairly self-explanatory. So with that, I am going to ask the question before we go to electronic voting. I'm going to canvass the room to see if we have consensus. Resolution is before you. Do we have any opposition to the resolution? Any opposition to the resolution before you? I see one hand that is raised, and I need confirmation that that is, I'm fairly certain that that is opposition to the resolution. So, I'm going to ask again just to get confirmation. That opposition to the resolution online, can you raise your hand again? Thank you. So we will go to a vote. Encore, if you can open the polls, please. Chiefs and proxy representatives, you should be getting an email very shortly on the vote for this resolution. Again, either in opposition, in favor, or abstaining. And you should have that now. If I can get confirmation on my screen, thank you, Encore. And the emails have been sent out. Again, this is draft resolution number 10. We'll give it a couple of minutes. If you haven't received the email, again, it's the same email from the previous, so you can go back to the previous, click on the link, open it up, use your 6-digit personal code, and you will get the list of all of the previous resolutions, and you'll be able to see the open resolution as well. So votes are coming in. Anybody in the room have any issues? If you have a problem in the room logging in or getting to the voting platform, our staff are available. If you have any issues online, again, I'm fairly sure they will re-put in the chat the phone number and the email if you need any assistance. We have technical support standing by if you're joining virtually, if you need assistance voting. I see one just getting their issue resolved, getting assistance in the back. Is there anybody else in the room? You need help voting? The polls are open. Anybody else? If you can raise your hand, if you need some help. Gawin, I see none. Oh, I see two in the back getting some help. So I'll just wait on them. So we're good with the here? Okay, we've got one more. We're good? Should we proceed? We're good here, and we've got potentially one more, I believe. Can you tell how many have voted? Okay. So we are waiting on one more that it looks like they're getting some assistance with their voting. Just if you can give me a thumbs up, can we go ahead? Or are they working on it? Okay, she's working on it. Okay, thumbs up. Thank you. Encore, if you can close the polls, please. Polls are now closed, and I'll have a look on my screen just to confirm the results. And the poll results I have here, and if I can have it up on the screen, please, as well. So there you have it, 98%, 98.1% in favor. So the resolution is carried. Yeah, miigwech, thank you. The next resolution, again, I'll be looking for the mover and the seconder. The next resolution is draft resolution number 37. If I can have draft resolution 37 up on the screen, please. So the draft resolution deals with the special honoring that took place this morning. It is moved by, it's titled Honoring the Legacy of Elijah Harper Through a Monument and AFN Advocacy. It's moved by Chief Samuel Knott, Red Sucker Lake. Chief Samuel Knott, are you in the room? Oh, thank you. Seconder is Chief Walter Harper. Miigwech, proxy. Yeah, thank you. So we have the mover and the seconder in the room. If we can scroll down. It reads, therefore be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly 1 call on all levels of government to formally honor the late Elijah Harper by supporting the establishment of a permanent public monument in Winnipeg, Manitoba, to be developed in consultation with the Harper family, proponents, and the appropriate jurisdictions. 2, direct the Assembly of First Nations, AFN, to call on the Government of Canada, the Province of Manitoba, the City of Winnipeg, and I've got my tongue twister here, philanthropic partners to secure dedicated funding for the monument's design, construction, and long-term stewardship. Number 3, direct the AFN to work jointly with the Regional Chief for Manitoba to support the Harper family and proponents in advancing this initiative and leading lobbying efforts for funding, ensuring the process reflects humility, respect, and the highest regard for Harper's legacy. 4, direct the AFN to report back to the First Nations in Assembly on progress, ensuring that this work is advanced with transparency, accountability, and reverence. So that's the resolution. It's not required, but mover and seconder, if you wish to speak to the resolution. Chief Knott, you're good? Okay. Proxy Harper, you're good? Thank you. And again, this deals with the presentation this morning. Any discussion? I see no discussion, nothing online. So with that, I'm going to ask the question. We may not need to go to electronic voting if we have consensus. Is there any, the resolution is before you, any opposition to the resolution? Any opposition? Third call, looking online as well, any opposition? I see none. So with that, the resolution is carried and adopted by consensus. So, miigwech, thank you. Next resolution is draft resolution 13. If I can have draft resolution 13 up on the screen, please. And this one is titled Outstanding Constitutional Issues and Revitalization of Constitutional Conferences. You will have that up on the screen. There it is. It is moved by Chief Daniel Manuel, who is present. Seconded by Chief Joe Muskokaman, who I saw earlier. Is Chief Joe Muskokaman back in the room? If Chief Muskokaman is not back in the room, I will be looking for another seconder. In the meantime, what I will do is I will read the resolution. Are you going to second, or are you in line to speak? In line to speak, it looks like. Are you seconding? No? Okay. Do we have a seconder? If not, I'm going to read the resolution, just so that you have a sense. Okay. Are you seconding? No? Okay. I'm going to read the resolution and then come back and look for a seconder. So it reads, therefore, be it resolved. You'll second? Okay, microphone 1, please.
Verna Billy Minibariat Thictaus, I second.
Thank you. Miigwech. It reads, therefore, be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly 1, reaffirm their commitment to seeking and achieving a constitutional amendment recognizing Aboriginal self-determination to which the Aboriginal peoples have inherent rights. 2, jointly and severally reaffirm their commitment to achieving full implementation of First Nations treaties and treaty rights. 3, call on the National Chief to pursue the revitalization of the constitutional conferences so that First Nations rights and title should not need to be litigated, but freely determined by First Nations in constitutional conferences. 4, direct the Assembly of First Nations, AFN, to request that the federal government revitalizes the constitutional conferences to determine the scope of Section 35 Aboriginal title and rights with fulsome and meaningful consultation and free, prior, and informed consent of First Nations. 5, direct the National Chief and the AFN to urge Canada to amend the Constitution Act 1982 and achieve consistency with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, first consulting and obtaining free, prior, and informed consent from the chiefs and leaders from across Canada before amending the Constitution Act 1982. 6, direct the National Chief and the AFN to seek funding from Canada to fully fund nationwide discussions, meetings, and conferences between First Nations and the Prime Minister and the First Ministers. 7, call on the National Chief and the AFN to establish national tables and invite chiefs, leaders, and technical staff of First Nations involved in diplomatic and political relations, both within and outside of the AFN, to engage in these conversations of national importance. So that is the resolution. I will ask the mover and seconder if they wish to speak. You have up to 4 minutes. Microphone 1.
Why Pisnog Seal, why Ilil Michwum, Isqueeze Danny Manuel, Kinyal Michwum, Tils Bachman, Ulton Kailfmus, Chief Dan Manuel, Upper Nicola Band. I just wanted to bring this resolution as a result of the dialogue that has been occurring over the past several months following up from the dialogue on the Bill C-5 with the Prime Minister in Gatineau in July, and really want to encourage some dialogue around how we expect to prepare ourselves in relation to the ongoing infringements of rights that have not been defined under the Canadian Constitution since it was repatriated in 1982. I've gone back and looked at the record of the organization and the chiefs going back into the 1970s, which are referenced in the recitals of the draft resolution, but there is a lot more information to, I think, to properly reflect the depth of dialogue and discussion that occurred prior to 1982 in relation to the Section 35 rights that have remained undefined, and the subsequent lack of respect by the government as we engage in dialogue on major projects, and as the Prime Minister himself yesterday expressed a commitment to meet with chiefs from across the country in an undefined and unrecognized fashion of the actual rights that we're discussing, because nowhere in Canadian law does there exist a definition of Section 35 rights. During the Bill C-5 dialogue in Gatineau in July, I asked every minister in attendance on the floor what rights they are committing to protect in a dialogue about major projects with First Nations across this country. And the answer from each one of them was Section 35 rights. But if we look at the recitals in the draft resolution, we can recognize that in 1983, the predecessor to this organization, the National Indian Brotherhood, expressed a notion that Section 35, or the provisions of protections of the repatriated Constitution, must include the following: the rights affirmed in the Royal Proclamation of 1973, the right of collective ownership, possession, and control of land and waters, surface and subsurface, airspace and natural resources, the right of collective ownership, possession, and control of heritage resources, the right to move freely within their traditional lands, regardless of territorial, provincial, or international boundaries, the rights and freedoms confirmed and acquired by treaties or agreements entered into prior or subsequent to the Constitution Act 1867 in Canada, and those signed outside Canada that directly affect the Indians, the rights or freedoms confirmed or acquired by way of treaties, land claims, settlements, or other agreements, the right to Indian government, including the right to determine their form of government and institutions and enjoy satisfactory fiscal relationships with other governments, the right to develop and exist as distinct First Nations, including the right to determine their respective citizenship, and the right to exemption from any direct or indirect taxation in respect of real personal property or of services, and from any successor duty, inheritance tax, or estate duty levied by non-Indian governments. Every issue listed in that list is everything we've talked about for the last 2 days. So I urge the chiefs to support the resolution, not to actually determine what the discussion
Thank you, Chief.
results in, but to determine the path of discussion. Thank you.
Migach, thank you, Chief, for that. I understand there may also be some amendments coming. I'm going to look around the room, and I do see a number at microphone number 1, but what I'm going to do is follow the same order. Look online, nobody online, so microphone 2.
Thank you very much. Noagamagan, Chief Delbert Wapa, Sunnertal First Nation. Ogamagan, Gihtiak, Minoniganiok. I stand here today to firmly oppose Resolution 13, outstanding Canadian constitutional issues and revitalization of constitutional conferences. This resolution is not a simple administrative step. It is a sweeping move that fundamentally threatens our treaty and inherent rights. Our reading and analysis of this makes it clear. Resolution 13 is the foundation for and impacts all other resolutions we are debating. It enables Canada to reopen the Constitution in ways that risk dismantling the very clause, Section 91.24, where Canada's fiduciary legal obligation rests. By pursuing constitutional reform under the guise of revitalization, Canada is seeking something much deeper: certainty over our lands, legitimacy to exercise authority, and ultimately the ability to shift responsibility for First Nations from federal to provincial governments. This is the same strategy we saw in the 1969 White Paper, now dressed in modern policy language and pushed forward through the AFN administrative processes. The resolution opens the door for a constitutional conference, something Canada desperately wants, because it would allow them to formally define Aboriginal title and rights using modern treaty templates, self-government agreements, and UNDRIP domestication processes. These tools can be and have been used to erode treaty jurisdiction rather than strengthen it. If Canada succeeds in altering or terminating lands reserved for Indians under Section 91.24, we face a future where the Crown's treaty obligations are effectively dissolved. Provinces would gain jurisdiction over our peoples and lands, and federal responsibility for our services, already chronically underfunded, would be offloaded entirely. This is not hypothetical. It is a well-documented pattern in Canada's legislative strategy since 2015. Let us be clear, AFN does not have treaty authority. AFN cannot bargain away our rights, our lands, or our treaty relationship with the Crown. This resolution, whether intentional or not, positions AFN as a vehicle for Canada's constitutional agenda. That is unacceptable and outside AFN's mandate. For these reasons, to protect our treaties, to defend our inherent jurisdiction, and to stop the erosions of Section 9124, I strongly oppose Resolution 13. Thank you.
Microphone number 1, please.
I'm going to introduce Eric Tatusis. He's a spokesperson for Treaty 1 to 11, and I'm just going to give him my time because he's going to probably need more time than my 4 minutes. But if there's any time extra, I can speak to. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Eric Tatusis, proxy chief from Poundmaker. And as Chief Jacko mentioned, I'm appointed to be the spokesperson for Treaties 1 to 11. And let's remember, folks, we are a Treaty 1 to 11 people, are the ones to represent these issues, no one else. We predate every other entity that has purported to represent our rights. But the time is here now that we have gathered, we have directives have been passed in our assemblies that we are in the process of moving forward in fully representing our rights. And that has to be honored and respected, because AFN is a corporation. It's not a treaty-based. And how many times have we heard that in the past? The only true entity and the only true people that can speak to these issues are treaty people. And there's no way we can relinquish anything that was God-given to an entity to erode and there be nothing for the next generations and generations to follow. Kia no po no humagantik, kia no po no temtik, ewana magamchim kapoistama, egoktakweso kapoistama, eganado ke sago chuekauya, kakitimahi chikoge, awasaka, egajas haganukstik. And we have to take that stance where we have to build and rebuild, reinvigorate these positions that our ancestors left for us, of a strong position where we represent ourselves, and that we'll work arm's length with the other entities. But when it comes to representing our inherent rights that were affirmed to continue by treaty making, we're the ones to speak to them. Thank you very much.
Microphone 1.
Chief Jacko from Cold Lake First Nations. You know, I felt disrespected yesterday. You know, I come many miles to talk to the Prime Minister. You know, we talk about nation to nation. Nobody speaks for my nation but me. My people put me here. You know, I have unanswered questions, you know, and the Prime Minister, he told me you're going to come to my territory. I still have unanswered questions about this carbon sequestration. It's going to be the world's biggest project. And I got support from this table for a federal impact assessment, you know, and then they're going to ram stuff right down my throat even harder now with no consultation or whatnot. It's frustrating. The AFN is not a rights holder, and I said this before. You know, my people shouldn't be suffering in our own country with the resources it has. Trillions of dollars. But yet my people are homeless. Yet my people are sleeping in boxes. That's not right. You know, how do we look after our people when we only get funded for on reserve? Right? As long as Canada derives a livelihood from my territory, so must we. So I know there's going to be ministers meeting and whatnot. I don't know what's going to come about it. You know, we didn't cede and surrender our land. There's nothing in our language that says that. And what elder would say that today? But yet my people are still suffering. We didn't give up our lands or anything. We decided to share. But is that true reconciliation? Did they share with the resources? You know, everybody gets the milk and honey from our lands, but yet we're still suffering. So, you know, you talk about reconciliation. I want reconciliation. You know, none of my people right across Turtle Island should be living in third world living conditions. You know, we heard the chief yesterday, boil advisory, you know. It shouldn't be like that. We should have all the resources that the municipalities have. You know, a lot of money just bypasses, go to municipalities, go to the provinces, but we're left out of the conversation. We need a seat at the table when decisions are being made for us. So I don't know how this ministers' meeting is going to be, but I want action. I want true reconciliation. In Canada and Alberta Premier, you can make it happen. Let's iron this out. You know, with this different talks about treaty. You know, we have a different way. We decided to share. We didn't give up anything. And I'm hoping everybody's listening to this, because this is the truth. It gets very frustrating sometimes being a chief. You know, it's a thankless job. You know, sometimes we hear we never do enough. But we try. You know, I got a lot of arrows in my back saying I'm not doing the right things. We have drugs that are plaguing our communities. The human rights violations if we do something, cut off welfare, kick people out of the houses. No, we're here for solutions. We're not the bad guys here. Just give us a seat at the table. We can come to solutions. Merci Cho.
Merci. So before we move on, we do have 3 chiefs that have approached the microphone, none online. It is obvious that we don't have consensus on this resolution. And I just want to ask a yes or no to the 3 speakers at the microphones. Are you speaking in favor or opposition of the resolution? Before we start, before we start, in favor or opposition? No, I'm not going to turn on any microphones. Is it in favor or opposition? 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 Is it in favor or opposition? Opposition. Okay. What? Thank you, Chief. What I'd like to do is hear the concern. So I'd like to hear the concern. But what I'd like to do is we don't have consensus. So this resolution was brought forward, obviously, by 2 chiefs. It is 2 chiefs that brought forward the resolution. It's obvious we don't have consensus. Our responsibility is to seek out consensus. So we don't have consensus, and there's a reason for it, and you've made it very clear. So we'd like to hear you speak. At that point, we don't have consensus. So we'd like to take it off to the side and see if we can develop consensus. If not, then we deal with the resolution. So we'll hear from the 3 speakers. Obviously, they are in opposition of the resolution, but again, this is a resolution that was brought forward by 2 chiefs. We have a mover and seconder. It comes from the floor, and we'd like to hear your concerns. But again, we will take it offline after that and see if you can have a discussion. Let's take it to the side and see if we can work things out. If not, then obviously it's your decision. So we just heard from microphone 1, so I'm going to go back to microphone 2 and then we'll come back. Yeah. Microphone 2, please.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chief Archiwabas, Wanamana Lake First Nation. You know, this, we're talking about the Constitution and amendments and everything and treaty. I concur the speakers before me. What I would like to what I would like to suggest for Chief's consideration is that yesterday, Prime Minister stated a transfer, an ownership to First Nations. I didn't really catch what he was saying on that point. It's almost like a devolution, but in a way, if we want to, take control of our governance in our community, I think we should look at that, because the deal that I have with Canada right now is not good. I want a better deal. So I would like to sit down with the Prime Minister and talk about, my envisioning of the deal. We want to, control, own all these programs and services that we have in a different form, in a different fashion. Like First Nations shouldn't be a financial burden to Canada, because we already have a treaty arrangement with the Crown. So the Crown, we're supposed to honor transfer of funds to First Nations, and then we decide how we're going to spend those dollars. That's the way I would like to work with Canada. But right now, we're under Indian Act, we're under other sections of, legislation and regulations. We're within their legislative framework. I want to get out of that. So if Prime Minister is serious about, transferring over some jurisdiction or some authority, I'm willing to look at him, All right, thank you. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Chief. Microphone 1.
Good afternoon. My name is Chief Billy Joe Tucker with Mikshu Cree First Nation in northern Alberta. And I stand here today to strongly oppose Resolution 13. Resolution 13 is framed as addressing outstanding constitutional issues, but its real effect is far more serious. It opens the door for Canada to fundamentally restructure the constitutional relationship with First Nations, including the potential removal of weakening of Section 9124, where Canada's legal obligations of treaty peoples currently reside. If Canada succeeds in altering or terminating the lands reserved for Indians clause, treaty obligations will be offloaded to provinces. Resolution 13 invites First Nations into a constitutional conference, which Canada has long sought in order to gain certainty for access to our lands and our resources. This comes at a time when the federal government is advancing legislation like the One Canadian Economy Act to fast-track resource extraction and weaken environmental protections. We cannot enable a progress designed to legitimize Canada's authority over our lands while diminishing our own. And yesterday was a clear indication of that, of how, even though we come to this assembly and you guys say it's our meeting, we're still under the colonial approach where you guys control the mics, where you hear, where we're all chiefs. There's a lot of times when we have meetings with our membership and there's stuff that we hear that makes us feel like we're not doing a lot. And yesterday, by silencing us and actually coddling the Prime Minister while he was here, is total disrespect. AFN needs to, once again, I want to make it clear, needs to stay in their lane. You guys are an advocacy and a facilitating organization. This is the second time to the Assembly I've been in the last 3 months where you guys tried this approach where you've tried to do the One Economy Act in September, and that was shot down as well. And now you guys trying this approach again and rewording it. And that's the reason why I'm in total opposition of this. I'm a chief of my nation, and I deserve the autonomy to speak for ourselves. Because I don't see any of you guys on stage or anywhere else coming to my nation and seeing what we're going through now. I will be tabling a resolution later about the treat and release, what's currently being rammed down our throats at the health of my people. And I'll make it clear now, as they made mention and they paid the honor to Elijah Harper, that one man made a stand. With me, it's not one man, it's one nation. So with that, Mimiksu Cree are strong opposition of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nigich. So just previously again, this resolution was brought forward by yourselves. Two chiefs brought forward the resolution. I had recommended that maybe you take some time and have some discussions to seek out consensus. At this point, I don't think we will have consensus. So this will be the final speaker, and then we'll go to the vote. So microphone 1.
Jeannie Crowchild. I'm proxy chief for Tsuut'ina Nation. I'm also the daughter of Regina Crowchild. And as you're all aware, my mother stands for treaty rights, jurisdiction. And Tsuut'ina Nation wants it known to AFN, who does not speak for us. We will be opposing this resolution. I'm a little nervous, but opposing it because Tsuut'ina will determine its own pathway. As you guys all know, my mom has retired, and this is hard on me to see her not here. But I am true to her word, true to my word, because she's a great teacher. And I really think AFN needs to really look at who bites the hand, how they feed their people. Because you have to bite the hand that feeds you to recognize the diversity of our nations, to recognize the treaties across this country. And in 2012, when Canada was asked how did they obtain legal title to our lands, this is part of their answer. They will return to the UN and they will tell them, we sought title to the land with the First Nations permission through all these legislations. So I'm here to remind you, as long as we're abiding by them and we're really not having a true say at those tables, we're giving Canada permission to have title to our lands. Silence is consent. And we need to speak up against that because we are the true owners of the land, not Canada. See us, Gus.
Rich. So the resolution is before you. I'm going to ask Encore to please open the polls. And chiefs, proxy representatives, you'll be getting an email, should be instantly, and you can cast your vote. Again, it's the same link as previous votes. If you don't get the email right away, you can use the one from earlier today or this morning. So votes are coming in, it looks like, they've opened the polls. We want to make sure everyone has an opportunity, so if you have any technical issues, again, we'll give it a few seconds, but if you do need some assistance, we have members of our distribution team. They're going around the room, they've got the neon lanyards, and they're able to assist. Anybody need some help? If so, just raise your hand. Okay, we've got some hands raised on this side and in the middle as well. And on the left too. And on my left. So it looks like numbers are coming in, if I'm reading it correctly. So the polls, I believe, are open. This is draft resolution 13. Okay, it's not loading? thank you. Okay, so we just got confirmation that it's not loading, so we just, I'll get some confirmation from our technical staff to see where that is at.
Do we have results coming in?
So if Encore, if you can refresh again my screen, it looks like we have some votes coming in. So we have some votes that are coming in, and we're looking to resolve the issue. Yeah, so we are aware that some people are getting a server error message. So it's okay, you can lower your hands for now. We'll just give it a minute here and we'll see, we'll get an update from our technical staff. So we do see a number of votes that came in and then it paused. So we are aware there is an issue. There is a technical issue. So at this point in the room, there's no point in asking for assistance from our support staff that are in the room. We'll just give it a few minutes here and we'll see where things are at with the server. If I can get another, oh, thank you, Encore. Our technical staff are working on the issue and just getting into the server. While we are waiting, I'm going to ask our distribution staff just to prepare in case we need to go to a manual count. If we need to go to a manual count, the process would be, of course, when we vote to raise your lanyard, we'll be looking for red lanyards. And in the Zoom room, we'll be asking for a show of hands. But again, we are going to give it a few minutes just to make sure and see what's happening with the server. And it looks like we just got a selfie with everybody in the room that way. I missed out. You got to take one facing this way. So we'll get some indication as to what's happening, but we will go back to the manual count if we need to. And just a reminder in terms of voting, in order for a resolution to pass, it requires 60% of the votes cast in opposition or in favor. You can still abstain, but it doesn't go towards the count to determine the 60% threshold. So we add up the total in favor and those in opposition, and if the threshold of 60% is met, then the resolution carries. So I'm going to give it another 30 seconds or so. I know my colleagues are helping out just to get some information, but distribution, I think you'll be standing by for a quick count. Where was it? So there is a beautiful earring. It looks like an earring. Oh no, it's a pin. It was at the ladies' washroom. It's not yours. Looks like a strawberry with Dayamanan. Strawberry with a beautiful flower. If it was found near the ladies' washroom just around the corner. If this is yours, this is up here. Beautiful pin. Well, yeah, we'll take it to the table to my left here. Okay, here's what we will do. Point of order has been raised, but there is, we're still having issues with the electronic voting. So here's what we're going to do. Two things. The seconder of the resolution is required to have an opportunity to speak to the resolution. The seconder did not speak to the resolution, so I will now go to the seconder of the resolution to be able to speak. After that, we are going to do a manual count. So here's the problem. When it's a hybrid session, we've got chiefs in the room. There's also chiefs on Zoom. So it becomes a little bit complicated. So what we're going to do is a two-step process. We'll do a manual count in the room. We'll finish that, and then we'll do the count on Zoom separately. So two steps, one at a time. That's how we're going to do the counting. Seconder of the resolution, microphone 1.
I yield my 4 minutes to Cook Manuel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Microphone 1, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for acknowledging the seconder, and thank the seconder for yielding her time. I just wanted to add, in response to the discussion following up here, this resolution did not come from the Assembly of First Nations. It did not come from the Government of Canada. It came from myself as the chief of my community in recognition of the fact that we have not had an opportunity to even engage in the level of dialogue we just did around an important issue, and the fact that the unfinished business of the constitutional conferences that were held were supported by First Nations across the country and leaders prior to the formation of this organization to actually address the issues that we know are lacking in the dialogue that we continually have with Canada. So The resolution isn't designed to provide an opportunity for anybody but ourselves to determine what the discussion and dialogue with the Government of Canada, distinctly and directly with our communities and nations, to address the systemic issues that we have talked about for the last 2 days, and we'll talk about for the rest of the day tomorrow, and future discussions, until we actually get a firm commitment and a solid commitment to undertake the work that our nations asked for in the actual formation of this country. So I just wanted to reply to that in an effort to address the comments related to the AFN. This doesn't come from my region of BCFN. This doesn't come from the national AFN. This comes from myself as Yelmichwam, the chief in my community, trying to address and to promote a dialogue with all of you, the fellow chiefs across the country, to address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Manuel, for that clarification, and thank you to the mover and the seconder, of course, for clarifying that they brought forward the resolution. We are going to give it one more shot, the electronic voting. I'm told it may be back, so here's what we're going to do. I want to confirm that the previous poll, that we had closed it electronically, and then we are going to restart. So I want to confirm that we have closed the poll that we tried to start. It's closed. So, Encore, can you please reopen the polls? Chiefs, proxy representatives, we'll give it another try. You should be getting an email. It will be a new email, but regardless, if it's the previous email, it takes you to the same platform. So you can even use this morning's email. So polls are open. I just want to get confirmation that votes are coming in. Votes are coming in. You've got a blank? So we'll give it a minute. It looks like votes are coming in. Oh, you got it. Very good. Thank you.
It's taking some time.
Pekad student do. Pekad student. I was just saying in my language, I've been told we'll take a minute, we'll pause, we'll do things carefully. My understanding is that the votes are coming in, so we appreciate that. While we're doing that, again, we are in the voting process. Microphone 1.
Wilf Adam, Chief of Lake Babine. I just want to be clear. The first vote is not going to be counted at all?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to be clear on that.
Thank you. So it's a technical question, and I have to be careful. My understanding is that we may have had potentially 8 votes before things paused on the server. And so we closed that poll, and we will restart. So votes are coming in. I can see the numbers coming in. We'll give it a bit more time, but I know that we have over 160 votes so far that have come in. So we'll restart the process. If you have technical challenges in the room, please raise your hand if you're not able to vote. We have one to my left. Anyone else not able to vote here in the room? Okay, so it sounds like we're doing okay. One more to my left. We have staff coming. We do still have staff that are available. Anybody else have any technical issues? Raise your hand, please. I think we're working with some chiefs. Maybe one. And once they resolve their issue, we'll start to wrap up and look at closing the polls. Not yet. Next. Just to help get ready, the next resolutions that we will be dealing with, we're going to bring them together in a basket of resolutions, a bundle of resolutions. There will be 3 of them, and we'll go through the same process. We will look at the resolutions. Just to clarify, are we okay? We're good. Okay. So, Encore, if you can close the polls, please. Oh, sorry. Are we? We're good? Okay, close the polls. Thank you. Oh, one more? Sorry, hold off. Well, we're waiting. So next resolutions will be draft resolutions 16, 18, and 26. These are environment resolutions. The theme is on the environment. We'll go through the 3 resolutions and then we'll have the vote. If it appears we have consensus, again, if there's no opposition to a certain resolution, we will ask the question, and if there's no opposition whatsoever, the resolution will be carried by consensus, is the process that we've been going through. So I just want to clarify, there was an issue here, and are we okay? Anybody else? We're good? I think we're good. Last call? Okay. Encore, close the polls, please. And just to confirm again, the 8 that voted, your votes, everybody's included in the voting. The results are here. There is a requirement for 60%. If I can have the results up on the screen, please. 61% opposed, 38.5 in favor. So the resolution does not carry. The resolution is defeated. So we'll go to the next 3 resolutions dealing with the environment. Same theme. We're going to start with draft resolution 16. So these all have the same theme. If I can have draft resolution 16 up on the screen, please. There it is. It's titled Protecting the Sacred Calving Grounds of the Porcupine Caribou Herd from Oil and Gas Development. It's moved by Chief Pauline Frost. Chief Frost, are you in the room? You can raise your hand. Chief Frost, thank you. Seconded by Chief Elizabeth Wright. Chief Elizabeth Wright is also present. Thank you. If we can scroll down. So the resolution reads, therefore, be it resolved that the First Nations in Assembly, 1, direct the Assembly of First Nations, AFN, to support efforts aimed at upholding the inherent rights of the Gwich'in Nacho Nyak and the Trondek Wet'chin to self-determination and seeking permanent protection of the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. 2, direct the AFN to advocate with Prime Minister Mark Carney to commit to safeguarding the porcupine caribou herd calving grounds in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in Alaska. So that is the resolution, a fairly self-explanatory support resolution. If the mover wishes to speak, or the seconder, you have that opportunity. So we'll start off with microphone number 2. Go ahead.
My name is Pauline Frost. I am Chief of Vantakwidgeon First Nation in North Yukon. For those of you that are not aware, Vantakwidgeon is the only isolated community in the north, small, 250 people. We are very traditional people. We live on the land, and of course we rely heavily on our subsistence way of life. One of the most expensive communities to live in the north. And so caribou is important to us. We are caribou people. We rely on we rely on a subsistence way of life. And so we want to look at gaining and garnering support from the rest of our colleagues across the country. And the reason for that is, one, we have the, as we know, the Trump administration is pushing forward oil and gas development on one of the most sacred lands in North America, one of the last wilderness areas. We've been pushing for the last 30 years to create a wilderness designation in this area. And that is because this is where the caribou go. Every year the caribou migrate 180,000 to 200,000, one of the last iconic caribou herds in the world, migrates to this area to calve. And once we know what happens when these sacred grounds are disrupted, you will never recover. We know what destruction means. We're talking about right now, you look at what's happening across the world in the circumpolar regions of our world with climate change and adaptation. We are trying to be responsive people. We're responsible for our land, our way of life, and trying to protect our nature, as you all are. And so we have yet to hear from Prime Minister. We have yet to hear from our colleagues, and with respect to protecting this area that means the world to us. It means the world to our people. We have no salmon in our river anymore. In fact, historically, we had tens of thousands of Chinook salmon coming up our river system. Last year, we had less than 500. The year before, we had 350. We are now talking about a species at risk. And that's the reality we live in. And so I'm here before you today to plead with you all to protect your sacred grounds, no matter where you are on Turtle Island. Protect your home. We have a responsibility to the future. We have a responsibility to our children. And so I'm emotional because I'm here. I've been doing this work since I was a young girl. And that's what we do as Indigenous people. I was asked as a young child to travel across the United States and advocate and educate the American public so that they essentially can help us. We have been successful in holding them in abeyance and pushing them off, pushing development. Now we know what's happening in the United States. We have an environmental impacts process in Canada. They have no rules that apply right now. They are fast tracking the work that the exploration work. This is what's happening. It's happening across the country. No consultation, no engagement, no consideration for us as Indigenous people. No consideration for the animals, no consideration for just for the use of this area. They're saying, oh, look, it's so far north, it's of no use and value to anyone. It is of use and value to us. We have lived on this in this area, and we want to ask you, please, to stand behind us, support us as we continue this fight to protect the sacred grounds of the Arctic Refuge. Merci.
Thank you. Merci. We'll turn it over to your colleague, the seconder. Microphone 2.
I'd like to start by thanking the Assembly of First Nations, the Chiefs in Assembly, for allowing us to stand here with you today to speak on what is very precious to us. For years, the porcupine caribou herd have migrated between the borders of Canada and the United States. These caribou use the lands for migration, feeding, calving, and we, the Gwich'in Nation, along with our Inuvialuit cousins to the north, have depended on the caribou for generations. For those that don't know the Gwich'in people, we reside in the Northwest Territories. Along the edges of the boreal forest, we have cousins to the west of us in the Yukon. We have cousins in Alaska, the United States. I'd like to say masicho and welcome all who stand for environmental advocacy, Indigenous rights, critical resources, and our way of life to come and support us as we continue our fight to protect the caribou. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, even for many of you who may never have set foot there, is an important symbol of pristine lands and our continued connection to it. In fact, we call the coastal plain the sacred place where life begins. The protection of this irreplaceable landscape is a matter of survival and food security for the Gwich'in and the Inuvialuit. The caribou today remain an important species to our peoples and to our cultures. And so together, we continue our work to protect the caribou and the land they migrate and depend on. We've been advocating this fight for nearly 40 years. My late father, Chief Johnny Charlie, was one of the many who were on the front lines. He was a founding member of the International Porcupine Caribou Management Board, where in 1985 they created the Porcupine Caribou Management Agreement. They have collectively spoken in opposition of oil and gas development in the coastal plains of the refuge. Former Prime Minister Trudeau committed to helping safeguard the herd's calving grounds through the roadmap for a renewed United States-Canada partnership. Unfortunately, the same commitment has not yet been made by Prime Minister Carney and his government. The threat facing the porcupine caribou herd and its habitat by the United States government is serious and urgent. Today, like many other species, the caribou that we have relied on for generations are at risk due to the industrial oil and gas pressures. Today we stand before you requesting your support for our motion and our continued efforts to protect the land, the animals, and the plants that we all hold so sacred. Masicho.
Merci. Miigwech, thank you to Chief Frost and Chief Wright, the mover and the seconder of the resolution. So I do see a significant number of delegates at the microphones. Again, our goal is to seek out consensus. So chiefs and proxy representatives, if you can start off by indicating obviously your name and First Nation, but whether you're opposing or in support of the resolution, but if you have a proposed amendment, if you can get to that as soon as possible. Microphone 1.
Kelsey Nacha Thushe Thui Chuktwe, Chief Kelsey Jacko, Cold Lake First Nations. I'm in support of this resolution, for the protection of porcupine caribou. I witnessed firsthand in my territory with the oil and gas. The only way I get to eat caribou now is if somebody hits it with a car, then it comes back to our territory. So much has been done with cumulative effects, It's very frustrating. Everybody thinks about economics, with this Bill C-5, but the environment still continues to suffer. Caribou are sensitive creatures. They can only exist in the cold. They need to be in high mountains or up north, or they will not survive. There are indicator animals. They tell us when the land is in trouble. We need them as messengers from the land to be the good stewards Creator intended us to be. This is especially important as our climate changes and their habitats are under pressure everywhere. So please support this resolution. You know, it is on the quarter. You know, if the caribou leaves, can you put a price value to that? You know, Ethan, that was our way of life, and it continues to be for my brothers and sisters. You know, they are at Dene, they're a part of Dene, so Masicho. So let's show support for this resolution.
Miigwech. So nobody online. Before I come back, a reminder, Chiefs, you've advised us that you'd like to get to your resolutions as efficiently as possible. So we're trying to manage our time, be as efficient as possible. But I do see a large delegation at microphone 2, also speakers at microphone 1. So I'm not hearing any opposition, but if there is support, the best way is to seek out consensus. But again, if you have an amendment, indicate so right away. Microphone 2.
Merci. Thank you, Salatin. My name is Choni Katale. I'm with Tutsake, Dene First Nation, up in Northwest Territories. And I want to say that Tutsake Dene First Nation will support this resolution because we're in the same situation. This mega project that's been approved, one of the projects up in Northwest Territories, it's called Grave Coves Corridor. And there's that road that's going to be proposed, that's going to be built up to the Arctic coast. And it's going to be built right beside the cabin grounds. So it's going to have a big effect on our way of life because we depend on the caribou. In 1992, we had over 400,000 caribou Bathurst herd. And when that diamond mine was being built, it was built right on the migration route. And today, we have less than 5,000 caribou. The government of Northwest Territories has not been able to manage the caribou herd. It was their responsibility, but they also didn't work in partnership with the Dene First Nations. So as a result of development, our caribou herd has declined, and our way of life has been altered. Our land has been altered. Our water has been destroyed. Our food source is at risk. And I think across the country, I think a lot of our people, First Nations people, are also going through the same thing. All their food, their fish, the water, even their plants, all being destroyed because of development. So what this resolution is saying that we have to protect the caribou, we have to protect the calving grounds, and it's got to be under the direction and control of the First Nation people. Because we had given that responsibility over to the government of Northwest Territories, and they haven't been doing a good job. The numbers are declining, coming to a point where our food source is at risk. The caribou is our sacred animal, and we have to do everything that we can to protect it. So the more support that we get, the more allies that we have, I think we're going to have a better chance in slowing down development, or even try to work in partnership to bring back the caribou herd and protect the camping grounds. With that, Masicho, Ahu.
Masicho. I have been advised that the entire delegation is there in support of the resolution, so thank you for that, but I'll keep going around. I'll go back to microphone number 1.
Hello, Chief Kaziz from Niskandaga First Nation. I'd like to thank my brothers and sisters talking about the wildlife that's getting destroyed in the land. I'd like to speak about the sturgeon. The sturgeon is very special, just like salmon out west. You know, we all have our food resources from the land. And snabeaki. And snabeaki is it's very important, our God-given right. And here, the developments are destroying just over $1 sign. Our land doesn't have a price. So, I know I have a big development coming on my way, which is called Ring of Fire. And we've been protecting our lands, our rivers, and there is lots that's going to be destroyed. Hearing the others that are facing the developments already, the livelihoods that's been impacted. And this is why we're standing strong on our land, and we need that support from others. That Ring of Fire that's been introduced to worldwide, it doesn't say nothing about protection about land, our lives. In our area, we have moose. We have large moose population. We have caribou in our population too. And we have lots of medicines that we use, that we all use as an Anishinaabe. And they are getting destroyed from any development. So I just want to bring that up. You know, we have to protect our livelihood. It's our culture. You know, I don't think I would be accepted if I go destroy somebody else's culture. This is our land, and it's not Anishinaabe. So, miigwech.
Thank you. So just a reminder, this is part of a bundle of resolutions dealing with the environment. I'd like to be fair to the other chiefs with the other resolutions and try and be efficient in our time, but I'll go to microphone 2.
Thank you, Dringwinzi, Masicho to everyone. Robert Charlie Tatlichi, I'm the chief of the Inuvik Native Band, and I'm also a member of the Gwich'in Nation. I'll be supporting this resolution, but I'm going to give the remaining time to Elder Lorraine Nitro from the Vantak Gwich'in First Nation.
Masicho, Lorraine Nitro Valji. Masicho to the chief for allowing me time to speak, and just want to acknowledge all the chiefs and the, our people, the Gwich'in people from across our nation who's standing here together in unity in support of this resolution. As you heard from my leaders, 40 years we've been advocating for protection of the sacred grounds of the porcupine caribou where the caribou give birth to their young, and that's over in Alaska. For 40 years we've stood before governments in Canada and the United States to ask for protection of this area. The porcupine caribou sustains our people from Alaska and us into the Yukon and Northwest Territories. Our elders call this sacred place the place where life begins. That's a place where life begins. Do we want to see these sacred places destroyed? There's only 6 months. Imagine that, 6 months of oil in this sacred area. And the United States want to drill and destroy our very livelihood. We've been on these lands and depended on these lands since time immemorial. Do we want to repeat history and destroy a people for the greed of another country? We stand before you to ask you, all of our leaders, our knowledge keepers, for support, to help us to protect the sacred lands for all future generations of our people. This does not only affect and impact the Gwich'in people, this impacts all of our brothers and sisters across Canada. We're all in the same boat. So if we can all stand in unity and strength and hold each other up, we'll be stronger together. And our governments, you know, it pains me. It breaks our hearts in our Gwich'in communities, especially our elders, our knowledge keepers, because we're not only dealing with Trump and his decisions.
30 seconds.
We're dealing with climate change. The very challenges of climate change is impacting our people. So, Masi Cho, and I appreciate the time to speak. Thank you.
Masi Cho. So the resolution is before you. It's important to be fair to the chiefs with the other environmental resolutions. So far I'm hearing full support. So unless there is opposition or a requested amendment, if we can keep it brief, microphone 1.
Byron Lewis, proxy for Lower Smeltkameen Indian Band, and I'm going to ask the mover and the seconder if they would consider a friendly amendment, and that's in the first whereas, where the word has seeking at the end and seeking permanent, and change that seeking to provide, because if you have seeking, it gives government the option to find, but if you have provide, is more solid that they must provide that protection. So it was just a request for a friendly amendment, and if that's so okay with the mover and seconder, and just to speak in, in support of the motion. I had an opportunity to go to Old Crow a number of years ago, and I come from the south and basically right down on close to the Canada-U.S. border, and we talk about our rights, our inherent rights and our sustain, but we in the south don't understand of the extent of our rights been impacted. And when I went up to north, I actually met with the community, and when Chief Frost mentioned the loss of Chinook, which is a keystone species, that was incredible to actually not only hear that, but talk to some of their people that used to have freezerfuls of Chinook salmon, along with caribou, along with all the other animals that are, that provided sustenance to their people through the year. And then looking at and going in there and understanding, walking into the co-op and going up to the cooler and looking at a small chunk of coho is about that big and about not even a half an inch thick, and that was $26. And looking at that, when you take that in consideration, a family of 5 in the south, that would cost over about damn near $130. You're starting to get pretty darn close to what an average family spends in the south, about half of that for a week. Or a small bag of rice for $9. then you start understanding clearly what it means to have your traditional diet, and especially when it costs for hauling. If you have an ice road going into some of these communities, it's 60 cents a pound. And if you do not have an ice road, that's $6 a pound. And I think for, if anything, we should be, going to Old Crow to actually study, to look what it is to still have your traditional foods and understand why it's so important to provide them support so they can protect that. And I really have to thank the people from Old Crow and Niguchon and everyone else from the north that invited me in, that gave me such a clear picture what it was to have your Aboriginal rights, your food, social and ceremonial use still intact. And I say thank you for that. And, I give you all the support what I can gather. But thank you again.
Miguch, thank you. So to the mover and the seconder, there's a requested amendment. It's up on the screen, but it's basically changing one word. It would be to remove the word seeking and changing it to providing. So it would now read to self-determination and providing permanent protection. Are you okay with that, mover? Yes, okay. Seconder? Yes, okay, thank you. Anybody else at microphone 2? If I can have someone with a red lanyard, just have you recognized, one of the chiefs? Just, okay, thank you. Microphone 2.
Thank you, Musty. National Chief George McKenzie here. I agree and I support the Gwich'in Nation about their porcupine caribou. Also, if it's okay, JC Catholic talked, and I'm a Tlinchon. We live for the caribou, by the caribou. There's nothing more important in sovereignty that we're talking about for 2 days. Sovereignty starts with the land, starts with our animal. Bill C-5 will bulldoze their way, and we've got to be ready for that. So we're asking for support across the nation. Sovereignty is the way to go. If you want to go sovereignty, we are the people of the land. This is not a museum piece. We occupy the land, we work on the land, we hunt on the land. All the chiefs behind me, they are all hunters. So this is dear to our heart. This is nothing more important today through sovereignty is about our animal, our caribou. That's why I'm here. A short message. I support my delegation. Masicho.
Masicho. A reminder, I am hearing full support so far on this resolution, and we need to be fair to the other environmental resolutions we'd like to get dealt with. Microphone 1.
Chief Wilf Adam, Lake Babine. The APTN Gajin Bagayit, the Watsi. Ayayit. Ay batats, anu yang kadang ni batats at sansan. Sanawa nasana no yestay no hani. Ay batats ay det si Twani and sen. It tani kay Watsi hayayit. It Messiah but it is nil. In my language, I just explained about the caribou. It nourishes our body and mind. It also was in our territory before. It was chased out by the moose. And now that they introduced elk back into our territory, the moose is starting to disappear. I support what they're doing up in the north, in the Yukon. When I was there a long time ago, they gave me some caribou meat. It was very delicious. So I brought some back to our territory and gave it to the elders. And it reminded them of what it was in the past, because it was plentiful in our area. Even one of our clans, the caribou, is one of the clans, the 4 clans in our system of government. So I just hope that the caribou doesn't disappear because of the developments that are happening all over the place. I hope that it doesn't happen the way it happened to us. So I fully support the people from the Yukon and make sure that we do protect the animals that feed us and support our health. Masai Cho.
Masai Cho. Is it fair to say that the chiefs are in support, standing behind the, okay, thank you. Microphone 1.
Bonjour, Mishkwab Ndijnikas, Makwan Ndodam, Mishnabe and Dow. I'm honored to introduce Elder Fred Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, I was there in 1969, 1970s when the National Indian Brotherhood transited to the Assembly of First Nations. And the word that I was advising at that time and during the constitutional conferences that was made reference to before, I rise on this occasion that not to speak about the Constitution and the previous resolution, but rather the wording which says recognized and affirmed treaty and Aboriginal rights. The word I was looking for in those days was respect. It's easy for me to recognize and affirm the laws of Canada. Whether I respect them or not is a different question. And that's the way it has been with us. For you understand, Mr. Chairman, and the other delegation, I rise as well on this occasion because one of the ladies said we need the support of the elders. I have reached that stage where people look at me as an elder. I don't call myself an elder because it has a connotation of wisdom and knowledge, neither one of which I have, but I do have an opinion. And that opinion is based on the age, wisdom of our ancestors. And I wish to tell you and remind us that when the Creator, as we understand the Creator in our own languages, cultural languages, and our own ways, that we may refer to the Supreme Being as the Creator, the Great Spirit, God, whatever language that we use to refer to the Creator, gave directions who placed the animals, the 4-leggeds, the winged ones, the crawlers, the water beings. Reference here earlier made to the sturgeon. Lake of the Woods, where I come from, was replete with sturgeon. After the Sandusky Company cleaned out Lake Erie, they looked for another source of sturgeon. They found Lake of the Woods. And they cleaned that out by 1900, and they blamed us, our people, having too many nets fishing. And then they cleaned out the pickerel by 1915. They also claimed us. All of that power came from the licenses of the provincial government. For in 1888, the St. Catharines Milling Company wanted to build a sawmill in our territory of Treaty 3. And when they did that, we were not consulted, we were not even involved in any way, notified of the proceedings. So the courts went all the way to London, England, and the Privy Council of Justice, I believe it's called, made that rendering that the lands and resources belong to Ontario and Lower Canada and Upper Canada. 1930s, that was transferred to Western provinces as well. What about the Treaty Indians? They called us Indians. They said they have fiduciary rights. My understanding of fiduciary rights says that we are here on this land by virtue of the goodness of the provinces. They did not even participate in those treaties. So you see, when the elders rise, and that lady and I acknowledge her, and that's why I wanted to get up and let you know that the elders do support, and we're talking about that in 1969, 1970, ever since these treaties were made, and the Aboriginal rights people talked about that. And Justice Seymour in Nisga'a, that was referred to by the Prime Minister, referred to the Nisga'a. It was there in that court decisions that the judge said that the purpose of treaties is to reconcile sovereignties. The purpose of sovereignty, as far as we understand it in the Anishinaabe languages, we were given those from the Creator. So the people, Canada and provinces, do not have inherent rights. They were delegated by Great Britain under the rule of the divine right of kings, not by the director of the Creator directly to our ancestors. So you can see that they do not have inherent rights. But the elders has got up over here to talk about support. Yes, because we rise as elders now. We gave you the opportunity to speak and advocate for our rights, but we are people that speak and exercise our duties. And there's a difference there. And that's why I felt it a duty to get up and support all these resolutions that are being talked about with respect to the land. The one thing I wanted to remind our people here is that the Canadian government, the Crown governments, do not have the capacity to put their heads around the concept that we are the land. We do not own the land. The land owns us. And the four-leggeds, the water beings, all of those, the flyers, the trees, we are part of them because they said, will you honor the rights and the laws of the Queen, is where we were asked in 1873 when the treaty was being negotiated. Chief Maldovenes said to the commissioner, he said, I will tell you, he said, when they asked him, will you obey the laws of the Queen? And he said, I will. He didn't answer yes or no. All he said was, I will tell you what the Great Spirit told us when he planted us here. The word, operative word here is planted. And I will tell you that in my part of the world, the Anishinaabe are also known as Ojibwe. The word Ojibwe comes from Ojibik, which means root. So like the tree, we are planted in the ground. We are part of that land. We do not own that land. And the people, like the provincial and the federal government that have proprietary rights, those particular rights, they do not have that particular spiritual authority to do so. But they do so, and we are bound by that because their laws are there for enforcement. Our laws are there for obedience and compliance. And that's what our people have been doing, because when they were told, you have to look after your little brother and your little sister, and that's what they are doing. The caribou that's being referred to, my mother, her clan is the Atik, that's the caribou. And there are people there in the Saskatchewan in our areas that the Mushkos, which is the elk. So the language, the laws that we are talking about are in our languages replete across Turtle Island. And we try to translate them, but they've become translated to be interpreted by the Supreme Court. They are to be interpreted according to our languages and according to our supreme laws, as we have called them the Constitution, if you will. We call our Constitution Kagiwe Nakonegein, which is the sacred law. That gives us Keite Nakonegein, which is what our ancestors learned from the Creator directly and passed it on to these generations that we call customary law, and we have the obligation, the duty, to try and explain that to the Prime Minister, who was talking about some of those things and did not mention the question of the fact that was there in their own Supreme Court that recognizes that we are the owners of this land, and that those treaties were based on that, the reconciliation of sovereignty. So I say, remind you, my final words, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. I wish to remind us, as I try to do every day, we, the Creator, the Creator that gave us the dispensation to say that we belong to the land. I remind the speakers, don't talk about, if you respectfully, don't talk about it as though the land, the animals are protecting us, or they're as if they were separate. No, we are the land. We are the animals. We are all of the land of creation. That's who we are. Remember that. So when you speak on that, remember that. You got you.
Miigwech, Elder Fred Kelly, for those comments. So I'm hearing full support for the resolution before you. I will have to pull this from the basket. We're not able to get to the other resolutions. We'll come back to resolutions tomorrow, but this resolution is before you. Chiefs and proxy representatives, before I go to a vote, I'm wondering if we have consensus. Is there any opposition to this resolution? If so, raise your hand. Any opposition? I'm looking online as well. Last call. Any opposition? I see none. So with that, resolution is carried and adopted by consensus. Miigwech, Masicho. So I know we need to get into the next agenda item, which you called for. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Cedric, and we'll get right into it. And we have a number of presentations, a number of discussions this afternoon. Oh, sorry, it's Veronique. It's my colleague Veronique that will be leading the next discussion.
Thank you, Adam. Donc, pour la prochaine heure, on a une séance plénière sur la réforme à long terme des services à l'enfance et à la famille des Premières Nations et du principe de Jordan à l'échelle nationale, à l'exception de l'Ontario. C'est une séance qui va avoir lieu avec le chef régional du Québec, Francis Véropol, ainsi que le chef régional de l'île du Prince-Édouard, Wendell Lebobi. Donc, on va pouvoir en discuter avec eux, puis il va également y avoir avec nous la chef Pauline Frost, ainsi que la docteure Cindy Blackstock, pour faire un bilan, en fait, là, des dernières étapes. Juste souligner aussi là, que le chef régional du Québec vient de prendre, s'est porté volontaire pour prendre le dossier de l'enfance, de la famille et du principe de Jordan. Donc, il porte ce dossier fièrement depuis quelques mois. So we are now having an hour of discussion, a plenary session on the National Commission, I always say NCCC, just to make sure I say the right thing here, the National Long-Term Reform for the First Nations Child and Family Services and Jordan's Principle. So we have a discussion with the Regional Chief, Francis Véropol from Quebec. He just took the file, the portfolio is the new portfolio holder for this file. It was really important for him to take that file, and so we're really lucky to have him take this file. And we also have the regional chief from Prince Edward Island, Wendell Lebobi, with us to discuss this. And we also have two invited guests who are Dr. Cindy Blackstock, as well as Chief Pauline Frost, who will be with us to discuss this matter and update us on the latest advances on this file. So I will turn over to the Regional Chief, Francis Véropol, for the introduction of this plenary session.
Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you, Veronique, for the introduction. So my name is Francis Véropol, as Veronique said. I'm the regional chief for the Quebec and Labrador region, and let me start by thanking thanking the Anishinaabe Nation for welcoming us on their unceded and unsurrendered territory. I really also want to thank the knowledge keeper in this room. I think you gave us the spirit in which we need to gather and in which we need to have those very important discussions. Let me very quickly introduce myself. I really don't want to take too much of your time. I really want to give as much time as possible to the presentation because you need Chief and Grand Chief to be updated on this very important file, but I just want to bring you my vision on could be my role, what should be my role on this very important work. So I am Pequagimilnu. I am from the Innu Nation of the now called Quebec Province. I want to start off by also acknowledging the work of all of you, Chief, Grand Chief, elected technician, all of you in this room. I did participate in this assembly for quite a few years now, and I really admire your leadership and your resilience. I'm extremely honored and privileged to join the team on this very important file, because yes, we need to see ourselves as a team. Well, at least I do. It's a very sensitive and complex file. I know that, but at the end, we all want the same thing. Let's not lose that in sight. Let me share my vision, like I said, about the work that we have ahead. A little bit about me. One of my background is in sports. To be specific, it's in hockey. I played hockey for quite a few years. And why I'm mentioning that is because I'm pretty sure that most of you are aware about hockey, know about hockey, and can relate to what I'm trying to maybe envision here. So I really intend to have that same mentality in my role. I'm here for the team, not for me. There's a bigger result at the end. When you put your jersey on in hockey, you don't play for the name on your back, you play for the logo in front. And I've learned that quite early in my age, and I'm really grateful for it. And you know what? I bring this with me every single day. And for this file, my logo in front is represented by all of you chiefs and grand chiefs and elected people, but also by all First Nation children. I see my role as someone who will support that already began work from NCCC, Caring Society, AFN, but also my brothers and sisters from now called the Ontario region. I had the chance to meet all of those working on this file now. And let me tell you, we are extremely lucky to have them. They all have tremendous knowledge. I trust them because I'm sure they are there as well for the team. And again, I know it's been a sensitive file, but let's all work together. That is what we need, and this is what I want to bring as energy and vision. This is all what I've known for years, to work as a team. I've played on quite a few teams where we've had our challenges, but we've always figured it out. Once you're on the ice, you play for the same team against another team. I've seen teams with the best players, but they were not the team winning the championship at the end of the year. It's not about the individuals, it's about teamwork, it's about owning our responsibilities, it's about trust, and it's about unselfishness. Even on the teams winning championship, it's not true that it's always easy and calm. There are fights, there are downs, and you either choose to see the glass half empty, or you take these moments as those who will strengthen our relationships, our resiliency, and grow as a team. This is how I want to work on this file. This is what I want to bring in my working bag every single day. We will still have challenges ahead, that's for sure, but as long as we are united, we will succeed. Our children will be looking at us later on how we dealt with challenges. Let's lift up all of those who's been working on this file for the past 20 years and the ones leading us today. This assembly has shown me over the years what is solidarity and respect. Even though we might sometimes disagree on things, there's a way to have those discussions and share our disagreement. I'll be behind you, supporting the work and willing to do anything I need to do to make sure we succeed. To the federal government, I want to conclude on this. I'll say one thing. You need to be working with us and not against us. I think it's been clear. We've heard it many times this week and in the past. We know, as First Nation, what's best for us, and we have evidence-based items coming from such work over the years that is not to be questionable. Tinish commit now for your attention, Grand Chief and Proxy, and thank you for welcoming me on this team. Thank you so much. Miigwech. Regional Chief Labob. Yeah. Oh.
Thank you, Regional Chief Francis Veropol, who is a portfolio holder for children and families and Jordan Principal. I will now invite to the microphone Wendell Labob, who, as part of AFN, holds the portfolios of missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people, and is the co-chair of On the Jordan's Principal.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me a part of your plenary today. I'm honored to provide some opening remarks on behalf of our AFN. I am the AFN Regional Chief Wendell Labob, representing the PEI region. I am the new co-portfolio holder for Jordan's Principal, which I am honored to share that work with Regional Chief Veropol. I know there are some important updates on the CHRT that we need to get to, so I'll try to keep my remarks brief. But I do want to say that I am looking forward to working closely with the NCCCC and the Caring Society. I put too many C's in that one. The Caring Society, and to hold Canada accountable for its discrimination in Jordan's Principal. We are united and work. When we are united and work together, we can achieve more for the children. The parties have already had a positive and truthful introductory meeting, and I am confident that we will be able to work together for the children in a good way. I also want to say that Jordan's Principal is an important file for me personally. We know when Canada does Jordan's Principal in the right way, children achieve more massive success. They graduate from school and they go on to do great things. But too often, Canada does not do Jordan's Principal in the right way. The services offered by Jordan's Principal are essential services, and when children do not get those services, they risk that they will come into care or even worse. Jordan's Principal and Child and Family Services are interrelated, and we must ensure our attention is always focused on both. Again, I just want to say thank you. It's really short, like I said. Thank you again for the time today, and I look forward to hearing our panelists speak this afternoon. So, Alan, thank you.
Thank you, Regional Chiefs, for the opening remarks. I will now turn over to the Chief Pauline Frost, who is also the chair of the National Children's Chief Commission.
Okay. Okay.
Pauline's presentation put up on the screen, please.
Okay, Jane Queensy, everyone, it's great to see you all here today. I want to just start by acknowledging the ancestors of this land. I want to acknowledge the elders that are present, all the Jijis and Jijus in the room. Thank you for guiding us. Thank you for teaching us. Thank you for grounding us, knowledge keepers, and doing this good work that we're doing. We would not be here, and we would not be advancing this without your presence. So I value that. So I'm going to start by just giving you some indication of where we are. We have an obligation, as you know, you as chiefs in assembly have passed resolutions to advance the work of protecting our children and to remove discriminatory practices that Canada have long practiced with regards to discriminating against First Nations children and families. There are many things that, that we essentially it's become a way of life for us. In fact, eras of residential school and 60 scoop, and now we're talking, new legislation. It's all about the children. It's about Canada's obligation, the Human Rights Tribunal's obligation to deliver on amendments and revisions to Canada's legislative and antiquated laws and policies. So the tribunal ordered, so the 2016 Canadian Human Rights Tribunal found that Canada discriminated against the Indigenous children and families. And I want to just say that we have to move very, very quickly. And our obligation here is to report to you and give you a bit of a report card on where we are and the work we've done to this point. So the tribunal ordered in August that we must have a framework agreement ready for submission by December 22nd. And in that, in the order, the tribunal encouraged the parties to work together. That means Canada needs to be at the table. Canada needs to find a solution with us. They cannot move without us. They cannot advance their policies without you. They cannot advance their policies without the families and children. So there has to be a collaboration. There has to be solutions-based vision. We're not seeing that. We're not seeing that because Canada is still resisting. We have tried since you've ordered that the National Children's Chiefs Commission establish itself. We had our first meeting in January and formalized the commission with representation from 11 of your provinces. And I want to just acknowledge the regional chiefs that presented in the Assembly of First Nations, and of course my colleague here, Dr. Cindy Blackstock, amazing people behind the scene for doing this great work and pulling together this draft final agreement on long-term reform. So the 2007 commitment, the Caring Society and AFN filed a complaint. 2016, the Human Rights Tribunal defined substantively that Canada has discriminated against our children. From 2016 to 25, continuous misappropriation, continuous practices that just was misaligned, and our children were affected. And not just the Family Children Services Jordan's Principles funding and programs, as you all know it to have been cut recently. One cannot move without the other. The National Children's Chiefs Commission and the Chiefs in Assembly in October of last year rejected the final agreement. You'll know it to be the $47.8 billion that Canada put on the table. And we acknowledged the agreement that was established or negotiated with Ontario, and I want to just congratulate them for doing a fantastic job for the region, but the rest of us in the country need a similar plan that addresses your core needs. And so part of the agreement and Canada's lack of correspondence, lack of response to the many letters, as you see here, we started this campaign, we started this effort, writing, attempting to meet, requesting meetings. The meetings that we did have were deemed as consultation, but they were introductory meetings. Let's sit down, let's talk. Half an hour is not sufficient. Half an hour is not sufficient to address the decades of wrongs. And that's what Canada submitted to the Human Rights Tribunal as their obligation and their duty, that they've met the duty to consult. So I encourage you all as we go through this exercise that we continue to push Canada, we continue to push the minister, and we continue to try to work together to find the essential solutions, your solutions, founded in your regions, that meets your needs and the needs of your children, based on your cultural practices, based on your needs. So you see here, we started this exercise months and months and months and no response. We sent letters, we met with, prior to the election, we met with the various leaders and of course trying to get commitment on some final solution before the election, unsuccessful, and we're still doing that. So essentially in August, as I said earlier, the Human Rights Tribunal made its final and binding decision, and that was to encourage and force Canada and the AFN, the National Children's Chiefs Commission and Caring Society, to come away with the framework agreement because they're tired of waiting. Our children cannot wait. Every day we miss, we lose another child. We cannot support this. We cannot support Canada's vision for the future of our children. Why is that? Because our children are apprehended, our children are cared for, but they'll only provide you support in your region. They won't provide support outside your region. And I speak from my region. As a modern treaty group, self-governing nations, there's no language in there that allows us to negotiate direct Crown Indigenous relationship around delivery of service programs for our children. NWT was left off the table. There was no mention of them in the agreement. We think about how do we equalize and ensure that every jurisdiction across the country has a voice and has access. So if you look at, we look at the expert opinions and the expert views that have been considered in the framework agreement, those expert views are your views, the views of the experts on the ground delivering the services, the Indigenous experts. So as we advance and set the clear parameters moving forward on the long-term reform remedies, we contemplated what does this mean? How is it that we can advance within 4 months? How can we get this done? And I want to assure you that since the moment you advised and directed with your resolution 60 and 61, giving very clear instructions, the team went to work and started drafting and started planning, and there are many of them, and they come from each one of your provinces. They are experts within your provinces. There are lawyers in your provinces. There are people that have been actively involved as activists in your areas. They have been doing this for 12 months. And they've been doing it without a salary, without resources. They're doing it because they're passionate, just like the conversation we had earlier around protecting a way of life of a people, of a nation, of a society. They do it because it comes from here. And we do it because it comes from here. You do it, and you sit here and you listen and you participate, and you all participated in a long-term reform plan requested by you as chiefs in assembly. And Dr. Cindy Blackstock will walk through some of those outcomes. So in the participation from each one of the regions, your commissioners have taken the time to reach out and work with all of you. If you haven't participated or you feel like your voice hasn't been heard, I encourage you to go onto the website. I encourage you to come and talk to us, give us your views. We will always consider, the options going forward. It will not be perfect, but it's a start. And I can tell you and guarantee you it's better than the plan that Canada has for us, because they have none. They have no plan. They've been given the same direction from the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. There's two things. National Children's Chiefs Commission design a plan and a framework with consultation and engagement of the regions. Canada do the same. Have any of you here, have your regions been consulted by Canada on the national framework? I don't see any hands up, so I don't assume that they had consulted with you. They have been also advised that there's an option, a third option, and that is to come to the table and work with us, find a solution together. And you saw on the previous slide all of the attempts that we've made, the correspondences, the phone calls, the meeting requests. Every response has been left unanswered. And here we are right now. And I want to just assure you that the work, the effort, I feel honored and I feel really proud of the team. The whole team is amazing, and I sit here and I look at them over there because I know we wouldn't be here had it not been for them. And I just last night actually, some of them worked till 1 in the morning preparing. So the other thing to think about is when we talk about who provides the services to your children, who controls the outcome? Who controls the outcome? Canada and the regions and the governments. It's not you as Indigenous people. It's not you as your Indigenous nation. Canada and the regions as it's defined as the agencies. In my region, the agency is the government of Yukon. That doesn't work for me, and I'm sure it doesn't work for you either. So I want to just say that Canada's plan is not a plan because you haven't designed the plan and you haven't participated in that plan. So considering the two plans and moving it forward and presenting it to the Human Rights Tribunal, they will determine the best path forward. And I'm telling you now that I strongly believe that they will find that the plan that you designed, the input you had in the framework agreement, is the plan of the future. It's the plan to eliminate racial discrimination, systemic racial discrimination, historical practices that have harmed our children. We have a plan and we have a model. You have a plan because you had input into that plan, and that's the plan the Human Rights Tribunal will agree with. But we heard from the Prime Minister yesterday. They have substantive resources on the table, but they won't tell us what that substantive resource is. They won't advise us how much money is there. Money is not the solution alone. When we talk about unique circumstances of each one of the regions, we think about the adequacy of resources. We have to think about the sustainability long term. The previous plan, as it was presented, had a 10-year life cycle. After 10 years, then what happens? We're going to end up in the same situation, a vicious cycle of discrimination. It's going to be subjected to an annual review, an annual funding review. Maybe they don't have enough resources that year, and maybe we won't get the supports we require. But they did not ask you, what about the cultural practices of your people? How did your cook come in? How did your Jeju take care of you? What did they teach you? What are the values and principles around the necessary programs and services? That's what's important. You have to design it. Your children deserve it. Know where you come from. Know who you are. Love yourself first. But you can't do that if you don't have the teachings of your people, and if you're apprehended and taken away into a city and taken away and off your traditional territory. That doesn't work. Our children are looking for home. They want to find a path home. We have to help them find their path home. We have to help them back to their communities. And we have to get the resources into your hands so that you essentially can provide the critical core needs that is culturally appropriate, that's culturally driven, that reflects your cultural-based practices. It has to be that way. That's how our ancestors raised us. That's how we want to raise our children. We don't want to comply with some laws that the government designs for us, right? I think I heard a beautiful elder speaking earlier. He gave us a big history lesson as a reminder of sovereignty as nations. And as sovereign nations, it is our inherent right, first and foremost, to protect our children. And I said this to the Prime Minister when he rolled out C5 to say, hey, we're going to build the economy of Canada. And he called all of us as chiefs to the meeting in here. And I showed up and I said, you will not do it on the backs of children. You need safe houses, safe drinking water. You need services for your children. You need healthy families. It's the only way you're going to have a healthy economy. You can't do healthy economy without thinking about the base, right? We can't leave our children behind. We have to strive for excellence. We have to strive for a future that we perfect, that you perfect. And we can never compromise the rights of our children. So Canada's discrimination and design and management of its practices, and as the future unfolds, we think about what does the future hold for us. We have a new Prime Minister, we have a new Minister. The Human Rights Tribunal made some rulings for us, gave us some instructions. And we went ahead, and so right now where we are, I think, is Canada essentially is holding on to some vision that they have, and that vision is that they've heard from some of the regions, and hearing from some of the regions, they've deemed that they have done their due diligence, and that's to ensure that they've met their consultation. So we demand, you demand from the Prime Minister and the Minister when you speak to her and to the government that it's their job to protect our children. Because I can tell you right now, I sat for many years watching my grandparents who were apprehended. We're going through the Missing Children's Project right now in my region. 7 children missing from my from my region. Half of those belong to my little community of 250 people. I don't know where they are. We don't know where they are. We want to find them. We're looking for answers. We will never, ever give up that right again. We will never compromise our children. I can tell you that as the chair of the National Children's Chiefs Commission. That's why I do the work. That's why I stand before you and I encourage you, please work with us. You've mandated us to work and get this, find a new path forward. The Assembly of First Nations, through this Assembly, removed essentially the executive responsibilities over to the NCCC to advance forward and start negotiating new terms and conditions. So once we get this decision, I just want to say that we will always do it with humility, with honor and pride, and keep our children up, and we will always do it in ceremony. We have to do it in ceremony. We have to do it with our children at heart, and I started this work in ceremony. I had the privilege of holding little Jordan River Anderson's little blanket and his little teddy bear as a reminder the decades of wrong and the beautiful people that are behind us working hard. We just want to thank them and the team for moving forward in a very positive way. And I want to just acknowledge, of course, the team. I think we're just going to move on to pass on the mic to Dr. Cindy Blackstock. She has about a half an hour left. We're going to try to open up for some questions and answers at the end. and respond to the questions that you might have. So we'll leave some space at the end, and I just want to thank you for that. So, merci.
Thank you, Chief Pauline Frost. Merci à la chef Pauline Frost, qui est la présidente de la Commission nationale des chefs pour les enfants. And I will now introduce Dr. Cindy Blackstock.
So it's a great honor to be here today, talk about such an important thing. One of the messages I have for the Government of Canada is, when you get things right, you can get them really right. When you obey the legal orders by the tribunal, the Caring Society and their leadership in this room will get calls like this. A First Nations boy who was struggling in high school because he learned in a different way, thought he was stupid and it was hopeless and he was going to drop out. But then when he finally got the help through Jordan's Principle, because Canada obeyed the ruling, that young man found out just how smart he was. And he is going on to university. When the Government of Canada does not obey the law or the direction of the chiefs to stop discriminating against our kids, we get this story. A First Nations family opens up the mail, and in there is a letter approving them for the services, the life-saving services their son needed. They had waited over a year and a half. Their son had passed 6 months before. That's what violating legal orders does. This case is about Canada stopping its discrimination, Canada following legal orders. It is in many ways only a first domino. We tip that and then we make the solutions of other problems possible in child welfare. But unless we get equitable and resources that are tailored to the needs of your kids, and unless Canada obeys the law, it's going to be very, very difficult to get those things out the door. So when we talk about this tribunal decision, it has to focus on things within the tribunal's jurisdiction. The tribunal only can make orders against Canada to stop it from discriminating in child and family services in Jordan's Principle. It's going to engage Jordan's Principle to a certain extent. You've seen it in your communities, where children who are receiving services under Jordan's Principle, they're all of a sudden being cut. They are to families that are in need. The only way they can get those services is putting their kids into care. We saw this before. I was looking at Marcel Balfour. We've seen this before so many times. And it has to be based on minimum standards. Legal orders and children's rights are not a ceiling, they are a floor. And they are not to be negotiated below that. These are basic rights that our kids deserve. So we had these engagement themes, you've seen them, and they were developed based on your feedback as leaders, the research over 25 years, the conversations of people over that length of time, and we brought it all together and thematically organized it, and then asked you, without any funding from Canada, to get together in your regions and provide your best feedback on these ideas, and you did. Over 100 different submissions arrived at the National Children's Chiefs Commission. So when Canada says we don't have time to get out and talk to 633 First Nations, I say a couple of things. One is that quite literally is your job. And the second is that we've done it without any money. We opened the gates and invited everybody into the process. And when we're doing things nationally that touch on every nation's children, that's the only way that we should be doing business. So these submissions have come in. It says 60 in there, but Chief Frost has reminded us it's actually over 100. We're going through the process right now of wrapping those up into national analysis about what can be in the national plan. There will be regional variations for each region, because every region is different. The tribunal recognizes that. And then we are going to be using that to inform a plan. There's two things we have to submit to the tribunal on December 22nd. One is this plan on how we would end Canada's discrimination in child and family. The second is equally important. What is our suggestion to the tribunal about what their next step should be? And we have remembered your resolution that said, give the chiefs 90 days with the material before you come to us and ask us for what our views are. And that will be part of our next step solution. So here's some things about what we heard from leadership, from experts, elders, young people, and in some cases, children themselves. And I just want to honor the National Children's Chiefs Commission, the regional chiefs, all of you, and I think it's really appropriate that we have a youth co-chair for this section, may I say. So one is that there's a real need to see alignment with the tribunal orders. Actually, what we did is a bit of an exercise on the technical side, is we took all of your direction from the resolutions you've passed, and we put it against the tribunal's orders, and it's really matching. What you're saying is, protect our kids for multiple generations. That's in a tribunal's order. What you're saying is our kids have experienced hardship for a long time. It's not just existing government services. They're going to need the extra help to get over all that discrimination. That's in the tribunal's orders. They're saying culture and language are important. You're saying that. That's in the tribunal's orders. They're saying regions have different variations. That's in the tribunal's orders. So there's a lot of synergy between what the chiefs have directed and what the leadership have said, and what the tribunal has said. So here's on the governance theme. One of the major things that came out is that First Nations make decisions for First Nations. And that is something that is very, very important, including for the process after the tribunal is gone. Because you will be there working with the children in your community. You'll have the tools of the legal orders, but then how do you enforce those tools? So how do we enable you as rights holders to be able to not only make those decisions, but to hold Canada accountable? And there's an important role for leadership and oversight. Transparency is really important. Accountability is really important. No one should have to go digging for where material came from. It should be provided to you on a regular basis. What we heard about who should play a role in governance, of course, leadership needs to, and I would like to see like ongoing decision-making in forums like this. But also for the Caring Society, that we're not, we're not a rights holder, but maybe we have something to contribute in terms of our expertise and our independence over the long run, an advisor role. A lot of support for the National Children's Chiefs Commission, for its independence, for its regional representation, for its role in executing the leadership direction. For the Assembly of First Nations, not so much a decision-making role, they're not a decision maker, but they do have a role in national advocacy. These things are word clouds, by the way, and when you see a bigger word, that's because it was said more often by all of you in your submissions. So we've also heard that there's important pieces of the puzzle on governance. It's not just First Nations chiefs. It's not just First Nations experts. It's got to include elders and knowledge keepers, youth with lived experience, and I would argue youth more broadly. Because as we're working together as a generation of young people, we want to be holding hands across, making sure everyone's supported in that. So what has the Government of Canada done in response to this order, 2025 CHRT 80? Remember, that order says a couple of clear things. One is, you can't go below the orders. Number two, you have to have evidence. Number three, you have to respect UNDRIP. Number four, you have to respect the rights of the child. Number five, you can't apply the Ontario Agreement to the rest of the country. Number six is that you really need to ensure that there's accountability and non-discrimination. Well, the Government of Canada has appealed that decision, and they have taken it to federal court. The basis for that appeal is very unclear in reading the submission. You can find it on fnwitness.ca to read it for yourselves. And what the case management judge has been appointed is Associate Judge Mulgat. So we're hoping to hear in the next little while, leadership, about what the schedule will be on that judicial review. But the important thing to know is the tribunal is still expecting us to deliver our plan on the 22nd. There's no stay here. So we're still going to deliver our plan. Canada's going to deliver its plan. And then the tribunal will make some determinations as to next steps. But this is a type of frivolous litigation against our kids that takes energy away from doing the work in a proper way. It's time for Canada to put down its sword and stop fighting our kids in court. Here are the key dates. We'll be filing the Assembly of First Nations and the Caring Society, along with the National Children's Chiefs Commission, this plan on how to address Canada's discrimination in child and family services on the 22nd. We would ask you on the 21st in your solstice ceremonies to say a prayer for children, all children around the world. We will also be filing what we think should happen in the next steps, and as I've told you, your resolution about having enough time to be able to talk to your experts, talk to your communities, and get back to us will be part of our submission to the tribunal. And then we will hear from the tribunal what they will do next. And we will certainly be back with all of you to talk to you about what that looks like. So one of the pieces I think is really important for Canada is to think about limiting its decision making. It wants to make a lot of decisions, but what was shown in the past is it's not capable of making the right decisions for kids. So as a long-term solution, we need to really restrict the number of decisions Canada makes, restrict the discretion Canada has in making those decisions to make sure they're non-discriminatory, and to provide, make sure they're walking into the space with some humility. After 157 years of discriminating against our kids, they should be welcoming every watchdog and looking at their business to hold them accountable. Because if any of us had hurt children like they have, we would want to make sure that we never did it again. A couple words on Jordan's principle. The federal government is fighting an elder in court at the Federal Court of Appeal. The elder is Joanne Powless from the Oneida Nation. She has 2 granddaughters in her care, beautiful girls, but they have severe asthma. Joanne lives in a house that has terrible black mold contamination. It'll cost $180,000 to fix. But putting those 2 girls into care for 1 year would cost them $130,000. The federal government said, no, Joanne, we're not paying for the getting rid of the mold. But this elder did what many of you would want to see her do, and that is she stood up for her granddaughters and she took the feds to court. You know? And the federal court said, yeah, we agree with her. You know what? When they did that bulletin, they didn't even look at the needs of the kids. It was pretty much a cost-cutting measure. And so the federal court agreed, and then what did the federal government do? They took the elder to court at the Federal Court of Appeal. And what did Joanne Powless do? She met them there, and she's arguing for her granddaughters again. We don't know what that decision is, but we have to stand with Joanne Powless and every other family that's going to court. And quite frankly, we need to pick up the tools of those Canadian Human Rights Tribunal orders, and we need to get every one of our lawyers in the courtrooms enforcing them against Canada, because they cannot allow our children to suffer just by broad street breaches of the law. And we have to use the right language too. Canada has over about 140,000 cases in what they call the backlog on Jordan's principle. That's not a backlog. That's 140,000 instances of Canada breaching legal orders to decide Jordan's principle cases within 48 hours. That's 140,000 violations of our children's rights. And we all together need to marshal every evidence till we hold Canada accountable. No more talking with due respect to the minister. There is an immediate requirement right now to withdraw that discriminatory bulletin that they dropped in February without any consultation, stop fighting elders and kids in court, and start implementing the solutions that are on the books. No more excuses on that front. 2 more words of caution. The minister, we've been advised that the minister is seeking out families to talk to on Jordan's Principle. And we would just raise with all of you, I'm sure, concerns about the dynamics of that. Where we have vulnerable families, all of us, who are so desperate to have their children's needs met. Meeting with the minister with the hope that their child's needs will be met, and then that doesn't happen. I personally think that the minister's time is far better spent implementing the many solutions already provided by First Nations leadership to withdraw that bulletin and stop fighting kids in court than meeting with vulnerable families. The second thing is we've heard about a conference. Well, I actually don't want to see money spent on a conference. I want to see money spent on kids. So let's make sure that child right now who's out there, who's waiting for life and death help, they get the $500,000 that the government would spend on a conference. Because I personally would not feel good wearing a badge at something that was taking away from kids. So let's not fall victim to these procedural matters. Let's stay laser focused on the work that we have ahead of us. And I have to say, I have never been a part of my life of seeing something so inspirational as what you have all provided. And that is your best ideas on how we can get there and the solidarity to do it. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Chief Pauline Frost, and also Dr. Cindy Blackstock for this discussion and this very interesting presentation. I had some quotes that I noted while you were speaking that I want to share maybe before we close this this discussion. So many papers here. Okay, here. Yeah, so I will say one in French that I noted from Chief Pauline Frost. Je vais dire une citation en français que j'ai notée des présentations qui ont eu lieu. Donc, la chef Pauline Frost qui nous rappelait que les enfants ne peuvent pas attendre que justice soit faite. Donc, je pense que c'est une citation qui est assez frappante. Puis les chefs, ça fait quand même plusieurs sessions que vous mettez de l'avant l'importance des enfants dans nos communautés. Donc, ça nous permet d'avoir ce type de discussion-là ensemble. For Chief Pauline Frost, I noted that the children in our communities cannot wait that justice for justice to be done, so they cannot wait. That's one of the quotes that I noted. And as for Dr. Cindy Blackstock, I noted that Canada is breaching legal orders and need to follow legal orders. So that's one of the things that was coming up of your presentation, and thank you for this. So this is what is ending our discussion. I see one chief approaching the microphone. I will just make sure that we have time. Just 1 second. Perfect. Can we open microphone number 1?
Good afternoon. I'm Mary T.G. Gray. I am from Takla Nation. I am the proxy for my chief, Chief John French, and it's an honor to be on this territory. And thank you to the rightful owners for that. I just wanted to thank both Chief Frost and Dr. Cindy Blackstock for the informative information and this wonderful presentation. And I just really also want to acknowledge and thank the chiefs in Assembly for supporting us to ensure that they were given the opportunity to update you as directed in the resolution, that the National Children's Chiefs Commission would provide updates. So I really want to thank you all for supporting the amendment to the agenda. I really want to emphasize the importance of all of us standing united now. If there ever was a time in history that we needed to be united as chiefs, as leaders, as parents, as aunties, as uncles, as hereditary chiefs, as matriarchs, it is now. We are coming to the end of a long journey. When we first started this case, that was, 20 years ago. And we are now coming to the culmination of all the good work and all the spirit and all of the energy that has been put into this to achieve justice for our children. And that can't be understated. We have 19 days to develop a national plan, 19 days. I'm going to ask all of you to share your prayers, to share your good energy, because we are coming to an end of this long, long battle. And what we come up with, we have to ensure that it stands the test of time, because in the tribunal CHRT Order 80 that Canada is challenging, in that order, it talks about how this agreement has to stand the test of time, that those not yet born will never experience discrimination again, that the orders are likened to a permanent injunction, and that is a win, not just for a single person, but that is shared by all of us, by all of you, and that is led by none other than Dr. Cindy Blackstock. I think about this when we first started, and the reason I'm saying this little bit of history is because this is the last plenary we're going to have on child and family until the national plan is completed. I remember Cindy saying this is what she needed to do. It was a David and Goliath moment. We didn't think we were going to win. We didn't know. But Cindy, yesterday, having supper with her, said, remember, she said, the elder said, even if we lose, the children knew that we loved them enough, to put all our chips on the table. And that's what we did, because the Caring Society had very little money to do the work. Canada withdrew our funding. We had about $50,000, and all of the armaments that Canada had, all their lawyers, all their research, all their policy people, all of that, we stood against them. And Cindy stood firm no matter what. And so when we have a child that has a special needs and may have not got service and then is now able to access assistance in school, that is Cindy Blackstock. When a nation that has never had the opportunity to have a therapeutic center, and it is built in the millions, that is the work of Dr. Cindy Blackstock. Don't forget our history, and let's give credit where credit is due. So leading us into this next generation of a life where we know that we could see the light at the end of the tunnel, where we know that if we stand united now, that we can see the end of discrimination against our children. And we can only do that with your spirit and your energy. Canada must withdraw their judicial review against CHRT 80. Canada must pay and start really, truly understand what the principle of what Jordan's principle is, understand that, and not contravene the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal orders. This national plan is a national plan. No matter what Canada tries to put in front of us to say we're going to do regional agreements that may have been good enough for Ontario, but the orders are telling us to stand together and have a national plan. That's where we're at right now. So if there ever was a time for us to be united, it is now, good people. My heart is full because I know the work that has taken us to get to this place. I know the sacrifices that Dr. Cindy Blackstock had to make, living away from her nation, living away from her family for all these years and decades. And thank you will never, ever suffice for the acknowledgement and the work that she has done. This is our last plenary until we get the national plan in. Think about the enormity that you are here in this moment and time of history, and give yourself a big round of applause, because you deserve it, because you stood strong and you made sure that they had an opportunity to present the good work that the National Children's Chiefs Commission, the good work that all the technicians have been doing, and the good work of our beautiful lawyers, Sarah Clark, David Taylor, and all those lawyers that did this work without any payment. They didn't get the $24 million and $90 million, whatever lawyers were trying to get. Thank you to them. So with that, good people, I think we need to stand and we need to honor Dr. Cindy Blackstock. Thank you, my sister, on behalf of all the children.
Thank you, Proxy TG. On this, I will close the speakers list at this time, so we will take the questions of the chiefs that are already at the microphone, but we still have other topics on the agenda as well afterwards, so we will take the speakers that are at the microphone at the moment. We can open microphone number 2, please. Maybe we can wait just a tiny second. Okay, so I was just informed that we will take just one more question. If you want to divide your time maybe between the people that are at the microphone at the moment, our guests are leaving, so we will do one more question. Microphone number 2, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Terrence Nelson. I'm proxy from Rosa River Reserve. My chief didn't come here like Gary Roberts. He didn't go to Dakota Ojibwe Tribal Council meetings. He doesn't go to Southern Chiefs Organization meetings. Didn't go to AMC meetings, and doesn't go to AFN. And I understand some of the reasoning now that a lot of things don't get done at the organizations when we talk about sovereignty. My mother was born in 1928. My father was born in 1929. When they were 5 and 6 years old, my mother was in Portage la Prairie residential school. She told me a story about this young man named James. He was from Long Plains. Long Plains was about 20 miles from Portage la Prairie. So he got, like all these kids were in school, they were taken. And they ended up, James got homesick. So he ran away. 3 times he ran away. First time they brought him back, they put him in a hallway for all the young kids to look at him. Second time he ran away, they shaved his head. They put a ball and chain in his hands so that the kids could see him. And my mom called him, James, a troublemaker. That really, really affected me because I know what that meant. The third time this young man ran away, they brought him into the classroom, and they made him put his hands out, both his hands. And the principal, who is a pretty big guy, He strapped them on his hands like that. And he strapped them on there. He wouldn't cry until finally he got to the end of his arms there, and he started crying. But that was a lesson to all those young people that were in that room, that you don't disobey the white people. What other nation or people get their children taken away? You go into a reserve, you pull those kids out of the house, and you take them away from their kids. Those kids are taken away from their parents, their grandparents, their culture. And today, look around this room. How many of us have lost our language result of the fact that of the residential school? I'm here to say to you, I'm a longtime member of the American Indian movement. In 1973, over 200,000 bullets went into Wounded Knee, where our people were standing. The only thing that anybody ever remembers was there was 2 FBI agents that got killed there. But there was 64 American Indian movement people that died in that time. And I haven't heard anything here that says, what is the plan? What is the plan? What strategy do we have to protect our sovereignty? There's over 200 embassies in Ottawa. I didn't see anybody here. There's no embassies here making presentations to us. I thank you for having the Native Americans come in. $44 billion they have in gaming. We haven't got a plan on how we protect our sovereignty.
Time's
So
over,
thank you
Chief.
very much.
Can you wrap up in maybe a few sentences?
Just
Please.
telling you right now, I'm going to go back home to Roseau, but I think one of the things that I'm saying to you is that we need to develop a plan on how we protect our sovereignty. Otherwise, we're going to just continue to talk. And I thank for some of the chiefs that have stood up and said, let's get something done. But I think we're losing our way at our organizations if we can't push. Like you saw Trudeau, you saw the Prime Minister and everybody here. We got to get past looking at treaty as just with Canada. I'm not a Canadian. I'm a Anishinaabe.
Thank you, Chief, for your comments and suggestions as well. Unfortunately, we have to close. We had to close the speakers list, so we won't be able to hear more comments. It will have to go to tomorrow with the discussions on the resolutions, because we have to get going with the agenda. I'm sorry, Chief. We have discussions on this tomorrow. I apologize, Chief, and thank you for understanding. I will turn over the microphone to Cedric for the next agenda item.
Thank you, Veronique. And again, thank you to Dr. Blackstock and Chief Pauline Frost. Again, as mentioned by my colleague, we do see you at the microphone, but we have resolutions on this topic tomorrow, so we'll create that space for discussion tomorrow, seeing that it is already past 4 o'clock on the second day, and we do have guests with us today. So for our next plenary session, we have 3 plenary sessions on the general theme of finance. I would like to invite Rob Van Wallenem, Vice President, Indigenous Affairs and General Counsel, and Candice Anderson, Director, Indigenous Engagement at the Major Projects Office, to join us for a plenary and informing you update. As they come to the stage, I will just tell you that after this, we will have a short presentation by First Nations Infrastructure on First Nations Infrastructure, and finally an announcement from the First Nations Bank of Canada. But for now, Rob and Candice.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. Bonjour and good afternoon, chiefs, elders, and leaders. I'm Rob Van Wallingham, and I represent today the Major Projects Office. I'm accountable for Indigenous Affairs. I'm also the General Counsel. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of the lands we're on today. It's my honor to be with you here in the traditional, unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. Thank you for inviting me. I also recognize many friendly faces of leaders that I've worked with in the past, faces that have not been hesitant to let me know whether I have hit or missed the mark, and I bring those lessons with me today. For those of you who don't know me, I spend most of my time throughout the year at the Major Projects Office, now located in southern Alberta, which is Treaty 7 territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Kainai, Pagani, as well as the Stoney Nakoda, the Good Stoney, Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Tsuut'ina nations. Honestly, this is a large room, and the last time I was in a room this size, I guarantee you I wasn't on this side of the microphone, so bear with me. But I do feel the energy in this room. I did watch the news last night. I do recognize that there could be some tension in the room, but I do feel the inspiration and the ambition as well. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral lands of all the Indigenous peoples that call this land home, and it is opportunities like this today that we can come together in sharing and learning in a spirit of true collaboration. I understand many of you have been following the development of Bill C-5, now the Building Canada Act, and the creation of the Major Projects Office. I also recognize that there's a strong desire among First Nations to be more closely involved and meaningfully engaged in the work that we do. This week marks week 14 since the Major Projects Office was created, and it was created to bring greater coordination to how major projects are reviewed and advanced in Canada. But for us at the office, success isn't just measured in efficiencies. It's also measured in the strengths of the relationships that we build along the way, especially with respect to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. So today, I come with an open mind to match the open hearts that I've encountered so often before. And I come with a great deal of curiosity to learn and hear about what you think about major projects. The Prime Minister made it clear that Canada is facing a generational challenge. We need to seize this moment and build a future for Canada that is rooted in shared prosperity, economic resilience, and sustainability for all Canadians. To respond to this challenge, our government tabled the One Canadian Economy Act in June, which includes the Building Canada Act, which created the Major Projects Office at the end of August. The Act and the effort underway within the office is about building a stronger, more resilient Canada by accelerating projects that are vital to our economic prosperity and, of course, national security, while maintaining environmental protection and respecting Indigenous rights. The federal government understands that as First Nations leaders, you are facing your own pressures in your communities, from affordability issues to infrastructure gaps. Bill C-5, now the Building Canada Act, aims to improve our economic conditions across the country, and to ensure that First Nations benefit, we want to work with you to this end. It is true that the legislation moved forward at an accelerated pace. But it's also true, as a nation, we have quickly found ourselves in a time of unprecedented challenges. The circumstances evolving around us, both right across the border and internationally, require a swift response. The recent global unpredictability compels us to move with haste. The world and its malevolent actors will not wait for us. We need to take action to control what we can control, to put us in the best position to respond to what we cannot control. So while the BCA was drafted, debated, and passed with uncharacteristic speed, it does have built-in measures to ensure that First Nations peoples are fundamentally included in decision-making going forward. Some would say that history tells us such speed must inevitably lead to adverse impacts to the interests of First Nations. I would recognize and acknowledge that history. However, new awareness of the true history of our country has changed the way we look at one another. Understanding the truth makes us more determined to avoid the mistakes of the past and to instead embrace the powerful potential of our collective futures. Looking out 7 generations, we can see how embracing our economic potential together, including significant and meaningful equity partnerships for First Nations peoples, will create lasting, sustainable generational change. We've been listening carefully at the office the last 14 weeks, and 10 of which I've joined the office. We've been listening carefully to the feedback received from Indigenous peoples. We've heard from you that meaningful consultation is an essential part of what we need to do to effectively implement the legislation. We received a clear and firm message that the legislation and its implementation must not infringe on Indigenous title rights or interests. Above all, this means ensuring that your rights and interests are respected throughout engagement and consultation process. As responsibility for Indigenous relations and as General Counsel, I understand the duty to consult and our obligations under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But beyond these obligations, I want to ensure that the office's approach to major projects reflects First Nations vision for how we can advance major projects in Canada together. The MPO is about building a stronger, more resilient Canada. It brings together governments, Indigenous partners, and industry to advance the nation-building projects that will shape our future. In September, the Prime Minister announced the first set of projects and transformative strategies referred to the Major Projects Office. This month, we built on the initial momentum of the office as the Prime Minister announced the second tranche of nation-building projects. The projects referred to the office are part of a strategic vision of nation-building. They are the building blocks that create a solid foundation for all of Canada and will also create opportunity for many other economic projects at diverse scales. Once a project is referred to the office, the MPO focuses on resolving policy or regulatory changes, structuring financing, ensuring meaningful engagement toward the goal of advancing the interests of Indigenous peoples, and reducing risks for projects. The MPO provides a single point of contact and leadership on major projects. This includes partnering with federal departments, provinces, territories, First Nations, and private sector participants. We do not seek to take sides, drive wedges, or play favorites. We seek to listen, learn, and provide solid advice. The MPO provides advice on whether projects are of national significance based on the 5 factors outlined in the Building Canada Act. Section 5 of the Act provides a framework for consideration of whether a project could be in the national interest, and namely to the extent each project can strengthen Canada's autonomy, resilience, and security, provide economic or other benefits to Canada, have a high likelihood of successful execution, contribute to clean growth and to meeting Canada's objectives with respect to climate change, and of course, whether it advances the interests of Indigenous peoples. The MPO will evaluate projects against these factors, and this work will be informed by consultations with Indigenous peoples, provinces, and territories, and the expertise of other federal departments and agencies. As we continue to advance nation-building projects, we will honor our commitments under the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, duties to consult, and modern treaties and self-government agreements. I can assure you that before any project is designated as a national interest project, the legislation requires consultation. And again, let me be clear. In no way does the legislation alter or fetter constitutional requirements for consultation or modern treaty-based assessment process. At this stage, no decisions have yet been made on projects of national interest. Any projects contemplated for designation must be assessed against the factors identified in the legislation, and again, this includes demonstration that a project advances the interests of Indigenous peoples. Consultation is not just about satisfying a legal requirement. We want to ensure that Indigenous peoples are fully involved in the decision-making processes underpinning implementation of the legislation. Major projects will proceed with meaningful engagement, consultation, and accommodation as required with impacted First Nations. Consultation with rights holders is required by the Canadian Constitution and is embedded in the Act as well. As proposals emerge, Indigenous participation is occurring at every stage. Major projects are being brought forward in a number of ways, including from Indigenous groups. The Government of Canada has been working closely with Indigenous peoples to evaluate projects that would offer the greatest benefits that we can move on quickly to meet the moment. A large part of the work the MPO will be doing is providing guidance to project proponents on establishing partnerships with First Nations, and as National Chief Woodhouse-Nipinak said, engaging meaningfully with Indigenous rights holders through the life of the entire project. The Major Projects Office work will be guided by an Indigenous Advisory Council, which will provide expert advice on policy, operational practices, and process improvements related to the inclusion of Indigenous perspectives and interests in major projects. My colleague Candace Anderson will be describing this council in more detail shortly. When it comes to designating projects in the national interest under the Building Canada Act, the legislation ensures that Indigenous peoples whose rights, including treaty rights, may be affected, are consulted. First, before a project is even deemed in the national interest. Then again, before the issuance of the conditions document, and also before any amendments could be made to those conditions. To increase Indigenous peoples' capacity to engage on major projects, the Government of Canada has committed $40 million over 2 years to support consultation and preparation for community readiness activities as it relates to major projects. This funding will support meaningful participation of Indigenous leadership in nation-building projects with a focus on supporting consultation activities for projects being considered under the Building Canada Act and supporting community readiness. Now, risk is not something that Canada has managed easily to date. But what is becoming clear is that the status quo will not work in our current economic and political climate. We all share the risk, but we all need to share the wealth as well. As such, a cornerstone of our work and partnerships is partnerships with First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples in how we do our work, in the projects we prioritize, and the opportunities we create together for future generations. That includes economic participation in partnerships. We are seeing across the country that projects succeed when Indigenous peoples have a seat at the table, including the opportunity for free, prior, and informed consent, and the opportunity to build generational wealth through equity ownership. Economic partnerships with Indigenous peoples are a defining feature of nation building. Projects referred to the Major Projects Office, we are prioritizing them, and they will include direct ownership, benefit sharing, or Indigenous-led business opportunities. Strong partnerships with Indigenous peoples lead to better outcomes for projects. We work closely with partners across government to make sure the projects referred to us are structured with Indigenous economic opportunities in mind. Our goal is to advance projects that include First Nations participation from the start. We know that for some Indigenous communities who want to partner in projects, access to affordable capital remains one of the biggest barriers. That is why the Major Projects Office sees the Canada Indigenous Loan Guarantee Corporation also as a key partner in our work. Indigenous loan guarantee programs and other tools that unlock affordable capital are essential. They help level the playing field, reduce financing costs, and enable Indigenous governments and businesses to participate as full partners in major projects. This is how we build a more competitive, resilient, and inclusive economy. And it's how we will ensure that the wealth generated by these nation-building projects is shared in a way that reflects the rights, aspirations, and economic leadership of Indigenous peoples across Canada. We recognize also that equity participation may not be the preferred path for all First Nations. So for each referred project, we will work with nations to understand their interests and priorities and to facilitate access to information and tools to ensure they benefit from projects. The MPO has been reaching out and will continue to welcome meetings with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We cannot remain in a country with a reputation as too slow to keep up with the global pace of change. We're better than that. We have to be. There cannot be prosperity for Canada without prosperity for First Nations peoples. And there cannot be prosperity for First Nations peoples without prosperity for Canada. We are in this together. And Canada could not have a better, wiser, more resilient partnership than it has with its First Nations peoples. I'm reminded by the veterans sitting in front of me that First Nations peoples have stood up for Canada for years. It's time Canada stands up for First Nations peoples. So on behalf of the Major Projects Office, let me express our gratitude for the opportunity to present at the Special Chiefs Assembly and introduce ourselves to many First Nation leaders. We look forward to continuing our relationship, and as we've been saying at this point, it's just the beginning as among all of us and the MPO. We feel it's important that you see us, you put a face to the office, that you know how we look at these things. I also want you to know I'm aware that we will not have time for Q&A on this session, but I'm not going anywhere. Candace is going to talk about the council, but I will be outside this room following this presentation, and I would be more than happy to engage with any of you who would like to talk more about this, either today or after today. You'll know where to find us, and I look forward to the conversation continuing. So thank you so much for your attention. I look forward to getting to know so many of you better. Candace Anderson.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Candace Anderson. I'm a director with the Major Projects Office, and I'm also the secretariat that supports the Indigenous Advisory Council that Rob mentioned and that the Prime Minister mentioned yesterday as well in his statement. I can't say enough how grateful I am to be here today. I've so appreciated the last few days of having conversations with so many of you, and I, as Rob mentioned, really look forward to having many more. So on September 10th, the Prime Minister did announce the creation of an Indigenous Advisory Council. The individuals on this advisory council are composed of members from First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. The council members were selected, and the council was put together fairly quickly to be able to set up and support the office that was announced on August 29th. The members that were selected bring a huge depth of knowledge and experience in the domain of various areas such as regulatory or business development, many of whom have been part of major projects and seen many successes in bringing prosperity to their communities. And we are very, very fortunate to have those individuals. I would say that over the last course of the last several days and even in the last several weeks, really appreciated getting a lot of your feedback and comments on the Indigenous Advisory Council. The council was created, it was a political appointment of such, but it is not to say that that is the only opportunity for folks to be considered future going on that council. So welcome any potential expressions of interest from anyone here as well. The council, I think it's important to note, because we've got a lot of questions about this aspect of the council's role. The intention is not that these council members represent rights holders or the communities from which they're from. The council members are representing themselves in the capacity, again, of their knowledge and experience. And their role in the office is really to ensure that Indigenous perspectives are guiding a lot of the policy work that we're undertaking to do. They've already been quite active. We had a meeting on November 7th. This was the first in-person meeting that we've had with them in Calgary. They are setting out their terms of reference and working together to co-develop that terms of reference. And that will be made publicly available on our MPO website. So you'll be able to access that. We'll also be providing updates publicly on a lot of the work that they're doing going forward. I think it's just important as well to note that they will not have any decision-making powers with respect to projects. That is seen as something that rights holders need to be very instrumentally involved in, nor will they be doing any of the consultation that is required under the duty to consult. So that's still very much an obligation directly with rights holders from the Government of Canada. We will absolutely and undoubtedly benefit from the expertise and knowledge that the council will provide. And so we're really excited about this initiative and having them guide the work that is underway. I would say, again, if you have any questions at all, happy to answer those. You can also reach out anytime to myself via email and or Rob. Again, just want to say thank you so much for having us here today, and we'll be outside for any further discussions.
Thank you very much to Rob and Candice. And again, they will be available and out around here. So if ever you do want to create those links, as mentioned by Rob, they will be available. And Regional Chief LeBeau will be giving a small token of our appreciation for your presence here. We'll be going immediately into our next presentation. So I would like to invite to the stage Ernie Daniels, President and CEO of the First Nations Finance Authority. Many of you already know Ernie. He's a CPA, has been on multiple boards, has worked with many First Nations organizations, and here today to talk to us about First Nations infrastructure financing. So I'd look towards Ernie to come to the stage.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Really appreciate being here today. I'm here today with the chair of our board, Chief Derek Epp from Tiaktil First Nation in British Columbia. Masicho to the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation for welcoming and hosting us on your territory this week. Thank you to the leadership in this room for all you do to support the progression of our First Nations and ensuring that we remain united. My name is Ernie Daniels. I'm Dene and a proud member of the Salt River First Nation in the Northwest Territories. I'm also President and CEO of the First Nations Finance Authority. I'm honored to stand before you today to not just share on the success of our First Nations for what they've been able to achieve by working with the FNFA, but also to share some perspectives on Canada's Budget 2025. While the budget didn't address many critical requirements of our nation, we remain optimistic and still see many opportunities that exist which we need to capitalize on. So who are we? Good question. FNFA became into existence in 1992 when a group of First Nation leaders envisioned a not-for-profit, Indigenous-owned and controlled financial institution. The intention is to provide all First Nations and Indigenous governments with the same financial instruments that other levels of government in Canada have at their disposal to build safe, healthy, and prosperous communities and tools to move away from the welfare-based economy. We are 100% First Nation-led. We are a not-for-profit organization operating under the First Nation Fiscal Management Act. All of our board members are elected First Nation leaders from communities we serve, and they provide guidance and oversight into everything we do. Before FNFA existed, First Nations were the only level of government in Canada without the access to capital markets. We changed that. And today, our nations have the ability to access the capital markets, and that's a very powerful tool. Today, nearly 400 First Nations have voluntarily joined the First Nation Fiscal Management Act, and more recently, we now have legislation coming into force to give self-governing nations the autonomy to also borrow from the First Nations Finance Authority. FNFA provides affordable financing, investment, and advisory services to nations who become scheduled and take the steps to work with us. As an example, FNFA's interim financing rate is 3.4%. Many of the nations represented in this room are members of the FNFA, and our goal is to continue empowering you to build your own futures on your own terms. Under the direction of our board, we are working to decolonize old, outdated structures with both proven and new innovative approaches to level the playing field between First Nations and the rest of Canada. We need to find ways to close the infrastructure gap that exists in our nations, and we will not and cannot rely on Canada to do this for us. Under the guidance of AFN, multiple comprehensive reports have now been released that quantify the infrastructure gap in our First Nations, now at a minimum of $350 billion. We also have evidence that investment into our nations results in a positive contribution to Canada and to Canada's GDP. Recently, FNFA passed a milestone where we have successfully raised over $4 billion through the capital markets for investments into nation-building projects, creating an estimated 39,000 jobs and creating close to $8.5 billion, not just for the Indigenous economy, but for Canada's economy. One of our principles is every loan tells a story, because they do. They make meaningful impacts in our nations. Some of the projects that we have financed are with the Haisla First Nation in the Cedar LNG project, valued at $1.4 billion equity. This gives the Haisla First Nation a 50.1% interest into Cedar LNG. Clearwater Seafoods, which has allowed for the return of the historical culture fishing rights with the Mi'kmaq, but has also allowed for 50% equity interest into North America's largest seafood company, Henvey Inlet First Nation wind farm, which has been transformational not just to Henvey Inlet, but to many communities around them, and is now providing clean energy to over 110,000 homes in southern Ontario. But we didn't get here overnight. In 2014, we issued our first bond, an FNFA bond, into the capital markets for $90 million. And without the leadership of our dedicated board of directors and the trust of the nations that we work with and our members, we would have not have access to $4 billion in financing. A pivotal achievement this past year was the successful refinancing of our inaugural 10-year bond that was issued in 2014, as well as issuing our first 30-year fixed-rate bond. A bond is a debt instrument that's used in the capital markets that's much like an IOU or a loan. A pivotal achievement this past year was the successful refinancing of this bond. We have now received 3 AA credit ratings, opinions from 3 different credit rating agencies. Because of all the safeguards we have in place, we have a very strong track record and have built a solid reputation with our institutional investors, which are global. For far too long, outdated, inequitable structures under the Indian Act have limited First Nations' ability to fully exercise self-determination. Access to affordable capital is critical for First Nations to advance their priorities and to help close the $350 billion infrastructure gap, and to participate into economic opportunities and create meaningful change in our communities. What the federal government must realize is when First Nations succeed, Canada succeeds. Because investment in Indigenous communities strengthens our economy, creates jobs, and contributes to Canada's GDP in a positive way. Access to affordable capital is just not an economic tool. It's a foundation for the overall health and well-being of our nations. It creates the conditions for growth, innovation, and long-term success. Most importantly, it ensures that Indigenous communities are not left on the sidelines, but are active participants and leaders in shaping Canada's future. We are the only First Nation-led organization in the world leveraging private capital from the international markets through a pool borrowing model. Lots of money exists in this capital markets. I estimate it's around $400 trillion, and our nations have access to this through the FNFA. The results speak for themselves. The FNFA model works. Today, we are watching First Nations become leaders in Canada's energy and resource economy on a global stage. While Budget 25 included positive opportunities for our communities to gain access to capital, we are also aware of the difficult cuts that will significantly impact our First Nations, and we need to continue to remain united and hold Canada to account for their fiduciary obligations. Budget 2025 brings forward investment opportunities that could open the door for new opportunities for our communities with actions like amendments to the First Nation Fiscal Management Act, which will allow the FNFA to finance Indigenous-owned special purpose vehicles, expanding access to affordable capital for major and economic resources. A special purpose vehicle, which is very familiar in our communities, and limited corporations where a number of First Nations can work together. Canada also intends to explore a bid bonding and surety backstop pilot for our First Nation contractors, allowing our First Nation contractors located on reserve equitable access to bonding facilities. A backstop would address inequities due to Section 89 of the Indian Act, which currently prohibits the ability for contractors to execute a necessary indemnity agreement required to obtain bonding insurance without costly and equitable alternatives. This intention signals an understanding of the need to remove inequitable barriers, which will create equitable conditions for First Nation business to scale and grow on parity with other Canadian businesses. Our small businesses are the backbone of our communities. Finally, Canada's mission to consider a monetization project for federal government transfers will unlock additional and much needed funding for on-reserve infrastructure, which allows us to build more with today's dollar than tomorrow's dollar. Our nation should never have to wait 70 years to build a school. We need to do away with the pay-as-you-go system that Canada currently employs for funding infrastructure. This monetization plan, monetizing is just another word for amortizing over a period of time. This plan is a high impact, low cost, and will unleash Indigenous capital and investments rooted in true partnerships between the Canadian government and Indigenous rights and title holders. People often ask, why do I do this work? Well, the answer is really simple: to improve the quality of life for our people. These legislative changes could make a brighter, more prosperous future, not just for today, but for generations to come. While the FNFA is ready to work in true partnership with Canada to finalize the amendments and pilots, our main priority remains the same: to support the First Nations access to capital they need to build healthy and strong communities. And we would be happy to work and learn from priorities in your nations. If you would like to support us in these initiatives, we would welcome you to contact our office, look at our website. We do have support letters that are available. And now I'd like to turn the podium over to Chief Derek Epp, who's the chair of the First Nations Finance Authority.
Thanks, Harry. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I want to acknowledge all the chiefs, delegates, elders, proxies in the room. Thanking you for allowing me to share a few words. I wasn't expecting to come up and speak, so I got a napkin of what I may or may not say. We'll see. But for those of you who don't know me, my traditional name is Wilelik. My given name is Derek Epp. I'm the chief of Chiactal, also known as Chiacton First Nation. We're about 100 kilometers east of Vancouver on the west coast, and very fortunate to be doing this for almost a decade now and following the footsteps of some amazing leaders that have really paved the path for me to do this work and be up here as the chairperson of the First Nations Finance Authority. And really what I want to share is some context to what Ernie just shared, some context to how these amendments actually will play out and how they make a big impact in access to capital and supporting First Nations' ability to become economically self-sufficient. First, I'll talk a bit about the SPVs, so special purpose vehicles, and the amendment to the First Nations Fiscal Management Act is so critical to being able to support the major infrastructure projects, whatever it may be across the country, and to be able to make sure that those revenues are staying in community. I'll give it a good example of one that just I was a part of for the last 2 years. Part of the negotiations team and now part of the board of Stan Sec 8. We were able to actually negotiate and acquire 12.5% equity of the Enbridge liquid natural gas pipeline from BC to southern BC, and it became a $736 million acquisition, which with the expansion will be around a $1.5 billion acquisition. Now, what happened in this acquisition, because FNFA's legislation doesn't allow us to lend to special purpose vehicles, we had to go down the conventional way of utilizing banks and institutions to actually finalize this negotiation and the deal and the financing that came along with it. But what that means is we're paying above rates above what the FNFA can offer. And really what I enjoy doing in these deals is negotiating these deals so that we get as many funds staying in the communities as possible. Because we do know that our communities are reinvesting these funds in infrastructure and housing and health and wellness, whatever it may be that's your community's priorities. This deal brought together 38 communities in BC on one asset, which is unprecedented in BC alone and really sets the stage for future projects. But again, being able to utilize the competitive financing rates that the FNFA can offer is such an advantage because it means more revenue stay in communities. I'm really proud that I can say in my community I have sidewalks on both sides of the streets. I have crosswalks. I have been able to build the infrastructure and bring in critical infrastructure to my community members is a direct result of working with the First Nations Fiscal Management Act and the Framework Agreement, and of course, being able to access lending through the First Nations Finance Authority. The bonding and surety is one that I think is, will have a massive impact in a lot of our individual members' lives, especially. Being able to participate in federal and provincial contracts is something that will open a door and be able to scale businesses for our individual members like we've never seen before. I have a couple members who own businesses in my own community who, because of bonding and surety, they can't participate in the big contracts, the federal, provincial, municipal contracts, but doing this will enable them to be able to scale their companies to a different level. Last, and probably one of the most important, is the monetization. As Ernie mentioned, $350 billion in infrastructure gap is massive. And being able to monetize these funds, and let's say we take $100 million and monetize that to $1 billion through the FNFA, we'll be able to provide infrastructure projects at a much more scalable and a faster pace so that our communities can begin to get that competitive edge. And I can say that from my experience. The city of Chilliwack is not a massive municipality, about 100,000 people, and we've grown a lot over the last couple of years. But now, because my community, Chiato, has been able to access business-grade infrastructure, we become competitive in our municipality. So much so that we're actually now working with the city of Chilliwack on unlocking land through the addition to reserve process and working at actually being able to co-design what the city of Chilliwack is going to look like with public schools, with public recreation sites, housing, infrastructure, commercial sites, light industrial, whatever it may be. What's that enabled my community to do? It's created own source revenue. And we've gone from 15, 20 years ago of having 90% of our revenues dependent on federal transfers to 90% of our revenues now own source revenue, and 10% are federal flow-through funds. I will never say we're dependent on the federal government, and that's something that I'm really proud of. And I want to just leave you with that these tools that we're working on at the Finance Authority do make a difference, and your support is valued through these processes. And we do look to the chiefs and the delegates to make sure that we have your consent to move forward as well on these. And we hope that we can get your support, because I can say for a fact that my community has directly benefited from these tools that the Finance Authority has access to. And with these three big changes, it will open up further economic tools. So I just want to say thank you for allowing me to share. It's really good to see some familiar faces in the room, and really looking forward to continuing the dialogue with each of you over these next couple days, months, years, whatever it may be. We're here to talk, we're here to support, and we're here to be a resource to help your community continue to progress. So thank you for allowing me to share. Enjoy the rest of the couple days here, and I'm looking forward to meeting and working with each of you.
So thank you to Chief Epp and Ernie Daniels. And I do believe I spotted a FNFA kiosk in the Circle of Trade. So for those of you who are wondering how to get into this, who want to create those discussions, you do have that opportunity, again, in Canada Hall number 3. And for our final presentation of the day, a plenary on the First Nations Bank of Canada, who's here to announce something major. I'd like to invite up our former National Chief, Perry Bellegarde, now Chair of the Board of the First Nations Bank of Canada, as well as Bill Lomax, President and CEO of the FNBC.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair, and good evening, friends and relatives. Nista, Ninashkamun. Happy to be with you all. Thanking you all. I want to acknowledge National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak and all the regional chiefs, and as well the elders, the Senate, Women's Council, Youth Council. It's a long time since I've been here. It's good to be back, but in my official capacity as the chair of an institution that's been around 30 years. And it's the First Nations Bank of Canada. And a little history here, since I am from a small reserve called Little Black Bear First Nation. That's where I grew up, Little Black Bear, Treaty 4 territory. And 30 years ago, 1996, is when our leadership in Saskatchewan, the 74 chiefs, and I told them, I'm going to come here and talk about the necessity about unity, the necessity about working together to build institutions that will benefit our people. And so 30 years ago, the 74 chiefs said, hey, Saskatchewan Indian Equity Foundation at that time, we have a lot of treaty land entitlement monies coming in, specific claims monies coming in. Why not create our own financial institution as an act of self-determination, as an act of self-government? And we've always said, let's occupy that space, occupy that field, and create our own institutions. And so, from the strong leadership, that's why I acknowledge our federation, our FSIN, Chief Bobby Cameron, the executive. And even though we have tough jobs sometimes keeping that unity, north, south, east, and west, because of that unity, the FSIN has built institutions over the years. Institutions like the Indigenous Cultural Centre. It used to be called the Saskatchewan Indian Cultural Centre. The Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technologies. The First Nations University of Canada. Saskatchewan Indian Gaming Authority. Saskatchewan Indian Equity Foundation. And of course now the First Nations Bank of Canada. It's through that unity. And when they came together with Chief Blaine Favel, the late Chief Roy Bird, Del Aniquat, Alan Brabant. He was one of the first lawyers. And they had to partner with an institution. And right now, it's that institution called the Toronto Dominion that stepped up and partnered with us years and years ago. So our FSIN has built upon that now, that partnership. And so our big five shareholders, if you will, yes, CEEF, the FSIN through CEEF is one. TD Bank is another one. Then the vision of the James Bay Cree invested with us and partnered with us. And then as well the Inuit people. And this is a difficult name. I'm looking to our CEO, Bill, Tutanarvik in Inuit. Close? Aktak Tuarvik. The Inuit peoples are 4. We also have Ermineskin now, Chief Mycat, 5. Lele Tine, Chief Darlene Logan, 6. And there's a big announcement why we have this chief up here from Treaty 3 from Wabagoon Lake. And I won't say his name till a little later on. I'll let Bill take care of that. That'll be 7. And our bank, like I say, has been around for years. And we say one of the biggest things we need to do is keep that unity. And as a board of directors, one of the biggest jobs that we have to do is hire a good CEO, a good Chief Executive Officer. So building upon the good work of Keith Martell, the first CEO that's been there, was there for over 25 plus years, and he built a solid team at the bank. Then succession planning kicked in, and as a board we had to go to the market to find an individual that could fill some pretty big shoes. And we found a gentleman from BC, from the Gitxsan First Nation, a gentleman with good education in finance, an MBA, a good education with legal background, but as well as his experience in the financial sector, from this big, we'll call it this big Sunya Ogimao house called Goldman Sachs, big money place. We drew upon that experience. We drew upon that wisdom and said, hey, come and help build upon this work. And so we're very fortunate to get this young man to my right here, our CEO, Mr. Bill Lomax. I'm going to call him up to do this introduction and why we're here, why we wanted time in front of the Chiefs of Canada to see and witness the First Nations Bank of Canada in action, a fully fledged chartered bank. And we have got to deal with OSFI and FinTrack and all the licensing and regulatory issues We got to deal with financing. We got to deal with the corporate sector and our retail sector and have a good strategy and vision going forward. And because we got this young man here, by the way, I want to say he was also recognized by the Toronto Globe and Mail as the newest CEO of the year. So Mr. Bill Lomax is our newest CEO of the year, was recognized by the corporate world in Canada. And I want to call him up now and to say some words here.
Thank you, Perry. Who is that guy he's talking about? Great to spend a little time with you today. My name is Bill Lomax, President and CEO for First Nations Bank. As Perry said, I'm also a member of the Gitxsan Nation, a member of the House of Luce, Wolf Clan, and my traditional name is Muskalewis. Wonderful to be with you here today. It's really an exciting day for us. We've been working very hard at the bank, and we've had a lot of records this year. Record growth in our commercial loan book, 26%, record profitability from our trust business, and most recently with this addition, record capital raise for the bank. And that all sounds very corporate, as I understand that, but this is money that's coming back to Indigenous communities. We're over 90% owned by Indigenous communities, and we're doing some fantastic work. Perry's, I think, alluded a little bit to it, but we have these great partnerships with some of the Crown banks, Canada Infrastructure Bank and Business Development Canada, BDC. With those, we're able to bring you capital at a lower cost than any other bank in the country, and we're able to help you buy existing operating businesses without having to put in your own capital. So there's a lot of things that we can do for you that other banks can't do, and we are the only Schedule I full-service bank in the country that is Indigenous owned. So it's a very exciting time to be here, and I think maybe that's part of the reason why we've had the exciting news for today, which is that we have Wabigoon Lake First Nation as our newest shareholder, and they're coming in basically 10%. And that makes him easily one of our top 5 investors. So we're really excited to introduce this partnership today. We have Chief Wedalainen here with us today, and glad to have him. I'm going to have him come up and say a few words as well. Thank you.
Bonjour. Makate Gabo, Dishkas, Musto Tem Makwakwi Mass, Wabagun Sagegan and Donji. My English name is Chief Clayton Wedalainen. I'd like to speak about how proud our little First Nation is to be an equity owner in this bank. And the reason why, just a few days ago, I sat with our membership, and our membership asked, why are we going to invest our money in the bank? And I said, are you happy with going to your regular bank and a small entrepreneur? And you know exactly what they hear? They hear no, or they give a list of tasks. So I want to make sure our membership and also the grassroots First Nation people across Canada, that they have a bank to go to support them. Also, this bank represents what is needed throughout the First Nations when we sit down and make partnerships. We get to the end of the deal, and then they tell us, okay, you got to borrow money from this company or this finance giant. And I thought to myself, why are we being told who to finance with? So that was another decision. We got to be sovereign. We got to have our own finance. We have to have our own bank. And I know there are serious issues in my community and serious issues across all the First Nations. But we have to try to prop up our youth. Our youth are looking for financing for their ideas. And that's one of the tasks I come as an equity owner and a challenge to our bank is to remember the membership, to remember who you serve. And we're going to be, just like in the past, we were the most powerful trading partners when the fur traders came in. We were always part of the finance, part of the trade. So I say miigwech to give us this opportunity to First Nations Bank of Canada. And I'm pleased to speak in front of the elders, in front of all the chiefs. So miigwech.
We'd like to now present the share certificate to Chief Whittle-Angling.
So again, thank you to former National Chief Perry Bellegarde, Bill Lomax, and again, congratulations to Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation in that investment, and again, an announcement that might also interest certain communities. We're coming to the end of our day. It's been a long one, so thank you for those of you who have stuck around and who are warrioring through this. Just as a quick note for tomorrow morning, we do start at 9 o'clock, pretty sharp. We have 2 panels for the entire morning with different ministers. We have the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, the Minister of Finance and National Revenue, as well as the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada within a first panel. And then we'll have a second panel with the Minister of Public Safety, of Housing and Infrastructure, of Emergency Management, and finally the Minister of Northern and Arctic Affairs. We also have our pipe ceremony at 7 o'clock, which will start is here in the main room. So rest up, thank you for your participation, and have a great evening, everyone.